Hello, and welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. I hope you've had a great day. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Let me help you drift off with some chilling paranormal stories. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so we can listen to mysterious encounters from around the world every night and get a good night's sleep together. Turn on your nightlight, put on your headphones, and let's jump into today's paranormal experiences. Alright, so a little bit of context first. I grew up on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, in this tiny rural pocket where our place backed onto a big stretch of bushland. It wasn't some little backyard either. Think a couple hundred acres of scrub and trails. My stepdad back then cut a bunch of bike tracks through it for me and my siblings, and honestly, any chance I got, I was out there. I was that kid who actually liked being alone. I'd pack a backpack with snacks, roll up a swag, and pretend I was doing my own bargain bin teen survival show. I'd ride out, find some random spot that felt like it belonged to me, and camp out just to get away from everything. And the funny thing is, I always felt safe out there. Like, weirdly safe. There weren't really predators to worry about, and anything that could spook you would bolt the second it heard a bike coming. The bush felt quiet and predictable. But one evening, it wasn't. It was midsummer, around 7:15 or 7:30, and the sun was still hanging around, bright enough that I didn't even think twice about going for a ride. I remember thinking I'd just do a couple hours on the trails and head back before it got properly dark. There was this one track I loved, winding, familiar, the kind you could ride without thinking too hard. And along it, there was this fallen tree that had been there for ages, lying straight across the path. Every time I came to it, I'd stop, lift the front wheel up onto the trunk, sort of bump the bike over, and keep going. So I roll up to that log like I've done 100 times, and I swear, the moment I stop, something in me just drops. Like instant unease. No warning, no slow build. Just this heavy, awful feeling, like I'd walked into someone else's space and they were furious about it. It felt like being watched, but not in a normal way. More like someone was staring through me with this old, angry intensity. Every hair on my arms went up, my stomach went tight. I remember actually pausing and thinking, what is that? Why do I feel like this? So I do what you do. I look around. Trees, scrub, shadows, the trail behind me, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I tried to logic it away. I was like, okay, Liam, calm down. You've had too many energy drinks. You're being dramatic. Plus, the nearest neighbor was ages away. Nobody's just wandering deep into our property for fun. It didn't make sense. And then, behind me, in the tree line, I hear it. A snap, like a twig breaking under a foot. My heart goes straight into my throat. I turn, scanning, fast. Nothing. But then another crack. And another. Not like a wallaby hopping off. Not like branches shifting in the wind. It sounded deliberate. Like something moving slowly, stepping carefully, but not trying hard enough to be silent. That's when the fear turned from uneasy into, I'm in danger, and I don't know why. I actually started talking, quiet at first, kind of embarrassed even though I was alone. Hello? Is someone there? No answer. Just more snapping. Around me, not just in one spot, like it was circling, or the sound was bouncing weirdly between the trees. And then I heard a voice. Not loud. Not close enough that I could point to it exactly, but close enough that my skin went cold. It said, "Help me." Except, it didn't sound like one person. That hit me like a shock. I don't even remember thinking. I just remember my body going, nope, nope, nope. I threw my bike over the log so hard I nearly stacked it. and I took off down the trail like my life depended on it. I have never ridden that fast before or since. I could barely see straight. All I could think was, get out, get out, get out. And as I started putting distance between me and that spot, it shrieked. I don't even know how to explain that sound properly. It was this warped, unnatural scream, like a person screaming, but mixed with this metallic screech, like truck brakes or tearing metal. Too loud, too wrong. It didn't sound like any animal I've ever heard in the bush. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept riding until I hit the far side of the property, where there was a barbed wire fence that backed onto a dirt road. I shoved the bike through, half fell over it, and basically sprinted the rest of the way home, dragging the bike like it was dead weight. That night, I told exactly one person, my little brother, Noah, and he just laughed and called me full of it, like I was trying to mess with him. So I dropped it. I didn't want to sound crazy, and honestly, I didn't want to say it out loud too much anyway, like speaking about it made it more real. But it stuck with me. It took ages before I could ride those trails again without getting that tight feeling in my chest. And that particular track, I avoided it for a long time. And the strangest part is, after that, nothing like it ever happened again. Not even close. So yeah, that's it. That's the story. And I'm telling you, I've tried to explain it every logical way I can, and every explanation feels like it falls short. I still don't know what I heard, or what was out there with me. What do you think it might have been? So, I've been around weird stuff most of my life. Honestly, it doesn't even rattle me the way it used to. When I was growing up, most of the paranormal things didn't happen to me as much as they happened to my best friend, Mara. We lived together for a while in this old house that just had a presence. You know that feeling when a place doesn't feel empty even when it's quiet? That kind of thing. After a while, it stopped being some spooky mystery and became more like, yeah, that's just how this house is. Fast forward to recently, late spring, I moved into a new place. Shared living situation, nothing fancy, but the room I'm in? It's got a vibe. Not like someone painted it the wrong color vibe, more like the air feels a little too thick sometimes. Like the room notices you noticing it. And I want to be clear, I'm not someone who panics easily. The paranormal is weirdly normal to me at this point. But even with that, there have been nights where I've gotten into bed, ready to sleep, and something in me goes, nope. Like this deep, instinctive alarm. I end up turning on the big overhead light, the one that floods the whole room, despite trying to fall asleep. Not because I'm scared of the dark, but because I feel watched, intensely watched. Like if I close my eyes, something's going to lean closer. Then a couple nights ago, something happened that genuinely gave me chills. I'm in bed, super calm. The kind of calm where your limbs feel heavy in a good way. I had a long day, and I'm doing that thing where you put on a random YouTube video just to have a voice in the background. It wasn't even creepy. Some guy talking about old legends, like the history behind folk heroes and outlaws. Totally harmless. I start drifting off and I hear a sound that doesn't quite match the video. At first, I ignore it, because your brain does that, right? You assume it's just part of whatever you're listening to. But then it gets clearer, like it's separate from the phone audio, like it's in the room with me. And then, right by my left ear, I hear a man's voice. Really close. Too close. He goes, "Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep." Over and over. Same phrase, same tone, like a broken record that's decided it wants something from me. I swear to you, I shot upright so fast I almost tangled myself in my blanket. heart pounding, scanning the room, staring into corners like I'm going to catch somebody standing there. And the whole time I'm thinking, that didn't come from the video. It just didn't. The video was still calmly droning on about medieval stories like nothing happened. And look, my first thought was also the most practical one. Am I hearing things? That scared me in a totally different way. But here's the thing. I'm a psych major. I know what I'm looking for if it were something clinical. And I'm not saying that in a cocky way. I mean, I've spent enough time learning how those symptoms tend to show up, and this doesn't fit. There's a difference I can't fully explain unless you've experienced it. This wasn't like a thought. It wasn't like something blooming inside my head. It sounded like a source, like sound traveling from a point in space into my ear. And that's also what's so unsettling, because this isn't even the first time in my life I've had something speak right into my ear like that. It's rare, but it's happened before. Just enough times that I know the texture of it, the presence of it. But that night didn't stop with the man's voice. And then I hear a woman. Not talking, not whispering, screaming. Like full-body, throat-ripping screaming, angry and chaotic and miserable. It wasn't like a horror movie boo scare. It was hellish. That's the only word that fits. Like pain turned into sound. At that point, I wasn't even trying to be brave anymore. I just felt sick. Not nauseous exactly, more like my nerves were buzzing, like my body couldn't decide whether to freeze or run. Now I'm sitting with this big, gnawing question that I can't shake. Why the fixation on me sleeping? Like, why that phrase? Why go to sleep over and over? What does it want from that? What does it get out of it? The repetition felt deliberate, like it was trying to push me under, like it cared more about me shutting down than it did about scaring me. And honestly, that's what worries me most. Not the voices on their own, not even the screaming, though that was awful, but the intent I felt behind it. Like it wasn't random. So yeah, I'm going back to some basics. I've started praying again before bed, even if it's quick. I'm thinking about doing some protective stuff, small things, steady things, something consistent. Because whether it's paranormal or something else, I can't keep pretending it doesn't affect me. I just want my room to feel like mine when I close my eyes. And right now, it doesn't. So, I kind of half live at my boyfriend Ethan's place. Not officially, but enough that I know every creak in the hallway and exactly which floorboard complains if you step on it wrong. My home situation isn't great, and his family's always been welcoming, so this house has become my safe place in a lot of ways, which is why it messes with my head that the house can feel wrong. Ethan and I are both 22 now, and we've been together for 6 years. And basically his whole life, he's had these weird, unexplainable experiences. Like, when he was little, he'd have these awful dreams. Fire, bones, that kind of thing. He's told me he used to see full-on figures sometimes. And for as long as he can remember, he's felt like there were shadows hanging around his bedroom, like something was always just watching from the corner. At first, I didn't really know what to do with that. I believed him, but it was one of those things where you hear it and you're like, okay, that's creepy, but maybe it's just childhood stuff. Except, about 2 years into us dating, Ethan started saying it was happening more often, more intense. Like whatever was quiet before had started clearing its throat. The house itself doesn't look creepy. It's actually really cozy. Nice decorations, peaceful neighborhood, big trees, that whole misty Pacific Northwest vibe. The kind of place you'd imagine drinking tea and reading in while it rains. But his bedroom? His bedroom has this heaviness to it. It's subtle, but it's there. like you're stepping into a room that remembers too much. And there's history. The house is older, mid-century, with this add-on room they built later, and a long time ago, an elderly couple lived there. The wife died in what is now Ethan's bedroom. Natural causes, but still. She died in that room. For a while, Ethan and I thought, okay, maybe it's her. Maybe she's pissed a teenage boy took over her space. But then his mom brought in this Catholic psychic medium lady, and she said, no, it's male. And she got weirdly vague after that, like she didn't want to say whether it felt human or something else, which is not comforting, by the way. And honestly, she wasn't super helpful, but that detail stuck with me. Because when whatever it is finally messed with me directly, it absolutely felt male. This was a couple years ago. Early morning. Ethan got up for work. He works construction with his dad. And I stayed in bed because I didn't have to be anywhere. I was that half asleep, half awake kind of cozy, where you're drifting but still aware of sounds. Important detail. Their voices outside always sound muffled through the closed window. Distant. Like you can tell they're talking, but you can't make out much. So I'm lying there, and suddenly, I hear a voice inside the room. Clear as day. Deep, like too deep. And it says, I used to be important. I remember just kind of blinking, trying to orient myself like, did I dream that? Did the window open? But no, this wasn't outside. This was right there with me. And what's weird is I didn't even panic. I'm jumpy by nature. I scare easily. But that morning, I felt strangely blank about it. Like tired enough that my brain just went, not dealing with this right now. And I swear to you, the moment I didn't react the way it wanted, it got angry. Because it felt like something rushed right up to my face, like in my space, and it said something else, in that same guttural voice. I can't remember the exact words, but I remember the feeling. Sharp, irritated, personal. And I felt cold air on my face, like someone was breathing right at me. And you know what I did? I rolled over. I must have fallen asleep, because a couple minutes later, I had my first and only sleep paralysis episode. It did that classic thing where you wake up and everything looks exactly like the room you're in, except you can't move. And in my paralysis dream, there was a cat on my chest. This little calico cat, heavy, like it had actual weight. For a couple seconds, I was just stuck. And then I remember thinking, nope, absolutely not. I forced myself to try to sit up, and when I did, reality started to distort. Like the room was shaking and vibrating, like a camera being rattled. The edges of things looked like they were falling apart, and the cat hissed, like angry, and swiped at my face. Then I snapped awake for real, lying on my back in Ethan's room, everything normal again. But the vibe after that? Not normal. Not for me. And it didn't stop there. Over the summer for months, we'd hear scratching in the walls. Not in one spot. Not in one room. It was always wherever you were, like it was tracking you, keeping close. And sure, people always say, animals in the walls, but it would happen at random times all day, and it would be hot. Like unbearably hot some days. I just couldn't picture anything happily nesting in there through that. Their dogs would freak out sometimes too, both of them suddenly barking at empty space, eyes darting like they were following movement. And the scariest part is when you can tell they're not just barking, they're seeing. One time, Ethan's dog Luna came trotting toward me with a toy in her mouth. She had to pass Ethan's open bedroom door to get to me, and the second she reached that doorway, she stopped dead. She looked into the room, dropped the toy, and just stared. I'm sitting on the floor like, "What's up, girl?" And I said, "Luna, what do you see?" And she exploded, just barking viciously, not like her at all. She looked genuinely worked up, like she was trying to warn something off. Then her gaze shifted, like whatever she'd been staring at moved closer to her, right in front of her face. And then she started attacking her own toy like it was alive, snarling, biting, shaking it so hard her whole body tensed. Her eyes looked wrong, like they were focused on something inches from her. And then she flung the toy so violently it smacked up against the wall near the ceiling. After that, she trotted over to me with her head down, like she wanted comfort, like she'd just seen something and didn't know what to do with it. There are 3 bigger things that happened after that. 3 things that made me stop brushing this off as weird vibes. First, a couple months ago, Ethan told me he felt something grab his ankle while he was asleep, like a hand. That was the first time it physically touched him. Second, about a week ago, his family went on a little overnight trip, and I stayed behind to watch the dogs. So I'm alone in this house, and I'm already not in the best headspace. It's late, I'm tired, I'm on edge, trying to keep myself distracted. And I start hearing the scratching again. This time it's coming from this big pantry in the kitchen. And I swear, the closer I got to the pantry, the louder it got. Like it wanted me right there. To distract myself, I pulled out my tarot cards. It's a hobby I've been learning for months. Nothing dramatic, just something that keeps my brain busy. I spread the deck in a wide arc on the table, all face down, and I left them like that because it was late and I was exhausted. The next morning, I walk in and one card has been pulled out of the arc and placed in the center. And listen, I didn't do it. I didn't half do it and forget. I didn't pull it in my sleep. It was just there. I felt freaked out, but also, this is embarrassing. I felt excited too. Like, okay, if something wanted my attention, what did it want to say? So I flipped it. If you know tarot, you know. Grief, loss, regret, abandonment. That kind of heartbreak that sits in your chest. And the sick thing is, it fit me too well. I'd been going through a breakup situation that wrecked me, and I'd lost someone I used to be close to not long before that. I'd been carrying a lot, and honestly, I didn't feel threatened by the card. It didn't feel like a warning. It felt like something saying, I see you. This is you. Which somehow made it even more unsettling because it felt intimate. Like whatever this is can read the room in a way that isn't normal. And then the last thing. This happened 2 nights ago, and it's the reason I finally went. Okay, we can't just live like this. I was out late, and I planned to sleep at Ethan's. Around 11:30 p.m., he texted me, "Where are you?" And it wasn't angry, it was off. Ethan isn't clingy. He's not the type to keep tabs, so I got this tight feeling in my stomach. I didn't get back until about 1 a.m. When I came in, he was asleep in the guest room. I was like, "Why aren't you in your room?" And he looked at me, dead serious, and said, "I'm not sleeping in there tonight." Then he told me what happened. He'd been lying in bed watching something on his phone, and he kept noticing movement out of the corner of his eye, shadows shifting. He tried to ignore it, but then he felt the bed dip, like someone climbing onto it. So he lowered his phone, and he saw it. A figure, tall, black, no details. Not a person he could recognize, just a shape, like darkness peeled off the corner of the room and decided to stand up. And it was at the end of his bed, up on its knees, arms stretched out toward him, like it was reaching. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He just got out of that room. And when he told me that, something in me snapped from, "This is creepy," to, "This is escalating." Because it's like it's getting bolder, like it's testing what it can do. And here's the other layer that makes my brain hurt. The area we live in has a reputation. It's that kind of mountain town place where people have stories. There's this neighbor who, late at night, blasts these insanely bright lights. So bright people miles away talk about them. Through weird small-town connections, I ended up talking to this older guy who's kind of like the town's unofficial paranormal researcher. He told me that the land around Ethan's neighborhood is rumored to be an ancient burial area for respected indigenous people, because the mountain nearby was considered sacred. And I keep thinking about that voice I heard. I used to be important. Like, is it possible this is someone ancient and angry? Someone whose resting place got built over, whose land got taken, whose name got swallowed by time. And if that's true, is it even fair to call it evil? Or is it just furious? I don't know. All I know is this. Whatever it is seems to focus on Ethan. It's like he's the main target. I get brushed by it sometimes, in these odd, personal ways, but it doesn't latch on to me the way it does to him. And that confuses me, because if the whole negative entities feed off pain thing is true, then I should be the easier meal. But it's him. It's always been him. And now it feels like it's stepping closer, like it's done lurking in corners and it's ready to be seen. And I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I don't want to wait around and find out what next looks like. So, this happened when I was 18. I'm 39 now, and I still don't like talking about it too late at night. Back then, I was living in a suburb in the southeast of Melbourne, Dandenong North. My family's place didn't match anything else on the street. Everyone around us had those solid, ordinary brick homes from the 70s and 80s. And then there was ours. This older, timber weatherboard house with a steep, almost storybook roofline. It creaked like it had opinions. In winter, it was freezing. In summer, it sighed and popped, and there were spots in the floor where you could literally feel the air coming up from underneath. We had a big dog, Rusty, who spent most of his time outside. He had a proper pen and a kennel, and he'd usually come in when everyone got home, then back out to sleep, especially if it was warm. We also had an indoor cat, Miso, who treated the whole house like it belonged to her, and we were just renting space. That week, I was on my own. Dad, Graham, was overseas for work. Mum, Leanne, and my younger sister Talia had gone to visit relatives for a few days. So it was just me, the dog outside, the cat inside, and this big old house making its usual noises. Here's where it starts. One evening, I was walking home from my shift. The sun was dropping low, that orange-gold light you get right before it disappears. As I turned the corner into our street, I looked up toward our place and I saw a figure, a person, standing on the roof of our carport. They were up there, still as anything, leaning toward one of the upstairs windows, the one that looked into the bedroom above the carport. We had 3 bedrooms upstairs, and that room always felt a little exposed because you could get to the carport roof pretty easily if you were determined. I couldn't make out details. It was just a dark silhouette against the fading sky, but it was definitely shaped like a person. I yelled, something like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" And the figure just moved. Not dramatically, just gone. Like it slipped backward and vanished off the edge before I could even process how fast that was. And the weird part? Rusty didn't bark, didn't make a sound, nothing. I remember standing there in the driveway with my stomach tight, listening for anything. I went inside, turned on lights, checked rooms, checked windows, checked doors, checked the back gate, the whole routine. Everything seemed normal. No broken locks, no open windows, no signs of anyone. So I did what people do when something doesn't make sense. I talked myself out of it. I convinced myself I'd seen a shadow from the tree line at sunset, or some weird angle of light. I remember actually laughing at myself a little, like, "All right, mate, calm down." The next night, I walked home again, and everything looked normal. I did another check anyway. Doors, windows, lights. I let Rusty in for a bit in the evening, fed the cat, tried to keep busy so I didn't sit there thinking about the roof. When it got late, I did my usual habit. I shut the doors inside the house. Not because I was trying to be dramatic, it was just practical. Those old doors were so squeaky, and if you left one open, the drafts would push it around. Sometimes you'd be downstairs and a door upstairs would slowly creak shut by itself, like the house was deciding things for you. So I shut everything, checked the locks, turned off every light, went upstairs to my room, closed my bedroom door, and went to sleep. And then, sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. I don't know what woke me. No loud bang, no obvious sound. Just that sudden, sharp awareness that you're awake, like your body flips a switch. A thin strip of light was spilling under my bedroom door from the hallway, and I remember thinking, that's not right. I turned that off. I always turn that off. I was still trying to figure out how I could have made that mistake when my doorknob started to rattle. Not a gentle wiggle, a proper rattle, like someone was holding it and turning it back and forth, trying to work out why the door wasn't opening. My whole body went cold. I rolled onto my side, facing the wall, the way you do when you're trying to become invisible. And my heart, honestly, it felt like it was trying to kick its way out of my chest. The knob stopped. Then the door opened. I kept my eyes shut. I told myself, don't move, don't react. If it's someone breaking in, just let them take whatever and leave. It was the only plan I had in that split second. But I cracked one eye open, the eye against the pillow, so it looked like I was still asleep. The hallway light painted this pale rectangle onto my wall. My door was fully open. I glanced at the digital clock on my stereo beside the bed. It was just after 2 a.m. And then, after a long stretch of nothing, the door creaked again. Slowly, the light on the wall began to shrink. The door was closing. And I remember thinking, okay, they checked the room, decided not to take anything, and they're leaving. Except I didn't hear footsteps, no breathing, no shuffle of clothes, nothing, just silence. Then I felt pressure around my feet. At first it was subtle, like the blanket tightening, like someone tugged it a tiny bit. And then it became unmistakable. The end of the bed dipped. Something was sitting on the end of my bed. Not standing, not brushing past. Sitting. I looked at the clock again. Now it was around 2:50 a.m., close enough to 3 that it made my stomach twist. I was completely frozen. I couldn't make myself sit up. I couldn't make myself roll over. I could barely swallow. And I had this awful thought. If I move, it'll know I'm awake. Still, after a while, I don't know how long, I decided to test it. Just the tiniest movement. Just enough to confirm I wasn't imagining it. So I slowly shifted my feet under the blanket, and my foot bumped into something solid. Not the bed frame, not the mattress. Something with resistance, like a shape occupying space. That moment was the clearest, most horrifying confirmation. There was something there. And there was still no sound. No weight shifting, no breath, no rustle. Just the pressure and the dip at the end of the bed, and my heartbeat roaring in my ears like it was the loudest thing in the world. After that, I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. Or maybe I just drifted in and out of some half-awake state from exhaustion and fear. Time got weird. The next clear moment I have is hearing the first birds outside, those early chirps right before sunrise. The room was slightly brighter, that gray-blue pre-morning light. I looked at the clock, just before 6 a.m., and then I felt it, the pressure lifting. The mattress rose back to normal. I held my breath, still not moving, still staring at the wall with that one eye open. The bedroom door opened again. The hallway light splashed across the wall like before, and then the door shut. And the daylight started to really come in, like the night was finally losing its grip. Not long after that, I forced myself up. My legs felt weak, like they didn't want to work. I checked the whole house, every window, every door, every lock. Everything was locked. Nothing was missing, and Miso, the cat, turned up stuck in the bathroom, yowling like she'd been abandoned for a year. She must have slipped in when I was brushing my teeth, and I didn't notice. So that's it. No proof, no explanation, no clear, this is what happened. Just that one night in Dandenong North, when I was home alone, I'm certain I saw someone on the roof. And I'm even more certain that something sat on the end of my bed for nearly 3 hours. And I can tell you this, I've never forgotten the exact feeling of that mattress dipping under weight that shouldn't have been there. Hey, I'm not really sure who else to say this to, so I'm just going to tell you, okay? In the last few months, like since late summer, my world has basically been ripped apart. My dad died. Then my uncle, who was more like a brother to me, died not long after. And then my grandmother. 3 deaths stacked on top of each other so fast I feel like I've been living in a fog with sharp edges. And at least one of them, it wasn't peaceful. It was traumatic. The kind of thing that leaves you replaying details you never asked to carry. And somehow, I ended up being the person who handles everything. Phone calls, decisions, paperwork, family logistics. The adult stuff that doesn't wait for you to stop grieving. I've been doing all of it while still feeling like I can't breathe most days. So here's where it gets weird. I've always had this thing. I don't even like calling it anything because it sounds dramatic, but let's call it sensing. Like I'll know something before it happens, or I'll feel a presence in a room, or I'll get these flashes that don't feel like imagination. I grew up in a family where anything like that got labeled as dark or wrong, so I learned to shove it down and pretend it wasn't there. I've spent my whole life being like, nope, not touching that. But my oldest kid, my son Liam, has the exact same thing. And watching him describe things he couldn't possibly know, watching him react the way I used to react, it's made it harder to deny. It's like seeing your own secret reflected back at you through someone you love. Anyway, recently we moved out of the city to this quiet rural place. It's peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of town where the main activity is antique shops and little roadside markets. And one day I'm out running errands, on the phone with my sister, Tessa, talking about my dad's property and the will and all this exhausting legal stuff. And I pass one of these antique stores and I just go, fine, whatever, I'm going in. I'm wandering around, half distracted, still talking to Tessa, and I see this tiny old book tucked into a shadowy corner of a shelf, like it's trying not to be noticed. And on the spine, in worn gold letters, is a name. Marceline. I swear to you, my stomach dropped. Because this isn't some common word. It isn't a trendy name. It's not something I see anywhere. But it has always meant something to me. Quietly, privately. Years ago, before I even had kids, I had this absolute certainty that if I ever had a daughter, I would name her Marceline. I never told anyone that. Not my friends, not my mom, not even my sister. Only my husband knew, because we're weirdly private about names. It was just mine. And here's the kicker. The book is rare. Like, old. The shop owner said it was printed sometime in the mid-1800s, and it was about my homeland and my culture. Things I grew up around. Things that feel like home, even though I now live a whole ocean away. So I'm standing there holding this book in a little antique shop in the middle of nowhere, while I'm on the phone talking about my father's death, and the one name I've always felt this strange pull toward is staring back at me like it's been waiting. I bought it. I didn't even hesitate. It felt too pointed to ignore. 2 days later, my grandmother died, and I had to travel back home because my mom has been falling apart. She's been sick with grief, honestly. The family has been through too much. When I got there, we pulled out an old photo album to find pictures for the service. I opened the album, flipped the cover back. I just sat there like, okay, that's a coincidence. Weird coincidence, but fine. The next day, I decided to visit my dad's grave. We never really got a goodbye, and I'm angry, like still angry. Grief and anger, all tangled together. His cemetery was a couple hours away, so I text my mom asking what it's called so I can plug it into maps. She writes back, "It's Marceline Cemetery." I just stared at my phone. And when I got there, he was buried near this big statue with the name Marceline carved into the base like it had always been there, like it belonged there. By that point, I wasn't even laughing. I was just numb. Like, all right, sure, of course it is. Then, the day after that, we're driving as a family, my husband, Noah, and the kids, to stay at my mom's house for the funeral the next morning, and I fall asleep in the car. I never fall asleep in the car. I'm the person who stays alert, who watches the road, who's tense the whole time. But I knocked out. And I wake up suddenly, like snapped awake, and I look out the window right as we pass a giant road sign in bold block letters. Marceline. Huge. Impossible to miss. At this point, I'm like, okay, this is not subtle. This is getting ridiculous. 5 days in a row, same name, different places, different forms. Like it's following me, or circling me, or trying to get my attention in the loudest possible way. Then we do the funeral. We do the hugs, the crying, the "let me know if you need anything" lines that people say when no one knows what else to say. And late that night, we drive back, 6 hours, and we finally get home. I'm exhausted down to my bones. And there's a package on the doormat. I bring it inside, open it up, and it's from my best friend, Priya. She included this note saying she'd been thinking about me, and she saw something that made her feel like she had to send it. Inside is a small, wrapped bundle. I unwrap it, and I swear my hands went cold. It's another copy of the book. A different edition, printed around the early 1900s. Same title, Marceline. And she found it in her city, on the opposite side of the country. Not near me, not connected to the antique shop, not connected to my trip, just out of nowhere. When I saw it, I actually dropped it, like my body rejected it for a second, because it didn't feel like a cute coincidence anymore. It felt like someone had walked up to me, grabbed my face gently but firmly, and said, "Hey, pay attention." And I don't even know what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. That's the part that's making me feel insane, because I can't stop thinking, am I reading too much into this? Is my grief making patterns out of random stuff? Or is this something else? Some kind of sign? Some kind of nudge? And if it's a nudge, from who? From what? For what purpose? And I haven't even told you the last part. A couple nights ago, I was staying in my mom's spare bedroom. Old house, quiet hallways. The kind of quiet that feels like it's listening back. I was completely wiped out, like beyond exhausted. I'm drifting off, and I feel it. This shift. Like a presence steps closer. Like someone is standing right beside the bed. I froze. My eyes were closed, but I could feel exactly where it was, like there was weight in the air. And I couldn't handle it. I just started whispering, then saying louder, "Please go away. Leave me alone. Not now, please." I kept repeating it like a prayer. And then I heard footsteps. And I heard the door. That door is old. The latch sticks. You have to pull it just right and press it shut and latch it properly. It does not just swing open, ever. I opened my eyes and watched the door open by itself, slowly, like someone was leaving, like whatever was there listened to me, turned, and walked out. I cannot explain the fear that hit me. I sat up so fast, my heart felt like it was trying to claw its way out of my chest. There was nobody else in the house awake. No pets, no breeze, no reason. And now I keep circling back to the same questions. Am I missing something? Is the name connected to what happened in that room? Is it connected to my dad? To my grandmother? To the mess of my grief? Or is it just life being weird while I'm falling apart? Because that's the truth. I feel like I'm falling apart. And I don't know if I'm being pulled towards something or if I'm just scared and searching for meaning where there isn't any. But I also know this. I haven't seen that name in years. And now it's like it's been following me 5 days straight, showing up everywhere I turn, like it refuses to let me look away. So, I don't talk about this all the time, but I'll tell you because it still feels real when I say it out loud. My ex, let's call him Evan, died in 2016 from an overdose. We have a child together, and our little one was only 3 when he passed. Evan and I were together for about 5 years, and honestly, so much of that time was me trying to help him stay sober. Appointments, promises, long talks, the hopeful stretches where it seemed like he might finally be okay. But then he relapsed in the fall of 2015, and he was gone not long after. Later I found out what he took was laced with fentanyl, just way more than his body could ever survive. And right after he died, like immediately, strange things started happening. Not horror movie scary, just weird, personal. Like the universe was nudging me and saying, pay attention. When Evan died, he was living with his parents, and he died in their house. I went over there later that day, and his whole family was there. Everyone stunned, crying, moving around like we were underwater. And then, out of nowhere, the power went out. Everything just went dark. People gasped, someone cursed, someone started fumbling for their phone flashlight. And then, a few days later, at the funeral home during his viewing, it happened again. The power cut out. Not for long, but long enough that everybody noticed, and the air changed. People were whispering, looking around, trying to laugh it off. Like if we joked, we wouldn't have to admit it felt like something was in the room. After that, life got very practical, very fast. I applied for Social Security survivor benefits for our child, and it took weeks and weeks to even get an appointment. I was barely hanging on financially, working for $10 an hour while trying to finish grad school, and I remember lying awake at night doing the math over and over, feeling sick because none of it added up. The night before my appointment, I had a dream. In the dream, I walked into this cozy restaurant, and the whole place was full of Evan's family. His parents, his siblings, people talking like it was some kind of gathering. And Evan was there too. The thing was, nobody could see him. Nobody reacted to him. It was like he didn't exist to anyone else. But I could see him. He walked right up to me like it was the most normal thing in the world, stood close, looked me in the eyes and said, "It's going to be okay with Social Security." Just that, calm and certain. And then I woke up. And it was okay. He'd worked enough that our child qualified, and that money ended up being what got us through. Preschool, childcare, the basics. It wasn't some magical windfall, but it was stability. And at the time, it felt like someone reached back and steadied me right as I was tipping over. The second dream was different, more unsettling. In that one, Evan was alive, but he was being arrested. Police lights, handcuffs, the whole thing. I was standing there watching him get guided toward the back of a squad car, and right before he got in, he turned his head and looked straight at me and said, "If I was still alive, this is where I'd be." That one hit me hard, because before he died, he'd been tangled up in legal problems. Serious possession charges, court dates, all that looming over him like a storm cloud. That dream didn't feel like a warning. It felt like honesty. Like he was admitting something he couldn't fix. And then there was the last dream, the one that still makes my throat tighten when I think about it. Evan was sitting on a bench. I walked over and sat beside him like I'd done it 1,000 times, and I kissed him. It felt normal, warm, like I was home for a second. Then this man approached us. He didn't speak, but I understood him completely. Like he was there for me. He was calm, solid, certain. He had this unmistakable military-style haircut, strong build, the kind of presence that makes you feel protected without doing anything at all. In the dream, Evan looked at me, and his voice was gentle. No bitterness, no pleading, just this quiet acceptance. He said, "Go with him. Move on." So I stood up, and I went. And here's the part that still messes with me. Not long after, I met my husband, Caleb, and he looked so much like the man from that dream it made my stomach drop the first time I really noticed it. Same vibe, same shape to him. And my husband is a police officer, and he did nearly 2 decades in the Army before that. None of these experiences felt scary, not like something was trying to hurt me. But every time I woke up after those dreams, the air in my room felt heavy, like the atmosphere had weight. I'd be emotionally wrecked the entire day. Not just sad, shaken, like something had happened to my body, not just my mind. They didn't feel like normal dreams. They felt like contact, like I'd actually been with him, heard him, touched him, met him somewhere I wasn't supposed to be able to go. And deep down, I still believe he was trying to tell me what he couldn't tell me when he was alive. That our child would be okay. That he knew where his life was headed. And that he wanted me to keep going. Okay, I'm going to start with something I don't always say out loud, because people hear it and immediately decide what box to put you in. But I've always been sensitive. Like the veil is thinner around me than it is for most people. If I get really quiet, like really quiet, and I let my mind unclench, I can sense things. Sometimes I'll even see something, just for a moment. It's not constant, it's more like the world slips and I catch what's underneath. And that brings me to my mom. Well, my situation with my mom. I loved her. Of course I did. She brought me into this world. But loving her didn't change the fact that behind closed doors, she could be cruel, manipulative, the kind of person everybody adores in public, but at home you're always bracing for the next twist of the knife. She could make you feel guilty for being hurt and confused for remembering things correctly. That kind of evil. Quiet, smiling, convincing. About 12 years ago, I had a blow-up with her and the man I thought was my dad. Let's call him Frank. I was in my early 40s when I did one of those ancestry tests. Just curiosity, you know? And it cracked my whole identity open. Turns out Frank wasn't my biological father. I had lived my entire life thinking I knew the truth, and suddenly, I didn't even know my own origin story. And the thing that gutted me wasn't just the secret. It was that I had made it to adulthood, past 18, past decades, without anyone respecting me enough to tell me who I really was. So I confronted my mom, let's call her Darlene, and she denied it. Swore I was wrong. Twisted the conversation until I was somehow the ungrateful one for asking. She did what she always did. Lied, acted wounded, made me feel like the villain. And that was it for me. I was done. I was hurt in a way that felt permanent. So I cut contact. For 12 years, I kept my distance. No calls, no visits, no pretending. Just silence. Now here's where things get strange. At the end of July, I had a corporate meeting out of town. My wife, Maya, said, "Since you're going, can we make it a little getaway?" So we booked an Airbnb for the week. It was beautiful, right on a river, not far from the ocean. Peaceful. The kind of place that makes your shoulders drop the second you step inside. We brought our dogs, 3 of them, and the beds were all queen-sized, so I decided to sleep in the extra room with one of the dogs. Just easier, less cramped. That first night, as I'm settling in, it starts raining. Not a storm exactly, but steady, rhythmic, like someone turning the volume down on the world. I'm lying there, half asleep, and about 10 minutes in, I open my eyes. And at the foot of the bed, there's this pale, transparent mist, like a shape made of thin white breath. It wasn't solid, but it was there. And weirdly, my first thought wasn't panic. It was more like, old house. Maybe I'm not alone. But the second that thought finished, I felt a tap on the bed, right near my ankles, on the tight sheets. And I heard it. That tiny, sharp sound, like a fingernail clicking fabric. I froze. 3 seconds later, tap. Same spot, same sound. 3 more seconds. Tap again. 3 taps. And I'm lying there thinking, okay, rain, something's dripping. So I sit up, turn on the light, and look around like an investigator. I check the ceiling, the window, the walls. There is nothing. Not a single leak. Not even dampness. Even my dog lifted his head and stared at the foot of the bed like, you saw that too, right? Then, just like that, the mist is gone. No more taps, no sound. I turned off the light, laid back down, and I fell asleep instantly. Like someone flipped a switch. And I slept good, too. Deep. She pauses. The lady? So I tell her. The mist, the taps, 3 times, between my ankles. And she's looking at me like I'm half joking, half not. She goes, "What makes you think it was a lady?" And I say, "Because I heard fingernails. I heard the nail hit the sheet." She asks if I'm sure the roof wasn't leaking. I tell her I checked. Nothing. That day, I go to my meetings. Come back that night, nothing happens. Second night, quiet, normal. And then day 2. I'm about 2 hours into the corporate thing, and my phone rings. It's my daughter, Renee. She says, "Dad, Frank just called me. He said Grandma passed away 2 nights ago, and he's just telling us now." My stomach dropped. I called Frank right away. No answer. So I left the meeting, packed up, grabbed Maya, the dogs, everything, and we drove 5 hours straight back home. The next day, Frank finally calls, confirms it, and I say, "Why didn't anyone tell me right away? Why wait 2 days?" And he says something like, "Nobody wanted to disrupt your precious life." That hit me like a slap, because it wasn't about disruption. It was about basic human decency. I tell him, "This isn't an interruption thing. She was still my mother. I should have been told." And he snaps back, "You wouldn't have come anyway," and hangs up. And that's when the other part begins, the part that still freaks me out to even talk about. After that first night at the river house, my body started falling apart. It began with my wrists. I woke up and couldn't bend them without pain, couldn't flex them at all without this sharp, hot stiffness. Then the next week, my knees swelled. Weak, unstable, inflamed like balloons under the skin. A few days later, my ankles and toes started doing it too, like my toes wanted to curl the wrong way, twisting and fighting me. Then my elbows couldn't straighten my arms fully. Walking became this slow, painful shuffle. Breathing even felt harder sometimes, like my chest didn't want to expand all the way. I remember looking at Maya, really looking at her, and saying, "Babe, I think that mist was my mother." She didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off. She just stared at me, and her face went tight. And she said quietly, "She would be the type to do something like that to her own son." And I said, "Yeah, exactly." Because that's the thing. If you knew her, you'd understand why my mind went there. She held grudges like trophies. She punished people for leaving. She wanted control more than peace. And in my head, I could almost hear her voice, cold and satisfied, like, "If I can't enjoy life anymore, neither will you." So I went into the garage, opened the door, grabbed sage because I didn't know what else to do, and I saged myself like I was trying to reset my whole spirit. I talked out loud. I told whatever was attached to me to leave. I said I was done carrying her. And I'm not kidding, next day I felt better. Not perfect, but like 50% better. Less swelling, more movement. Like I'd cracked open a window in a room that had been sealed. Then the day after that, it all slammed back into place. Like whatever it was said, "Cute try," and doubled down. I went to the doctor. They gave me meds just so I could function while they wait on blood work. Autoimmune? Arthritis? Stress response? I don't know. Results were supposed to come in soon, and my brain kept cycling through every possible explanation. And I'm stuck in this awful in-between. Because on one hand, yes, bodies do weird things. Stress can wreck you. Illness can show up out of nowhere. Timing can be coincidence. But on the other hand, so I don't know what's true. I don't know if it's grief that I didn't even get to process properly. I don't know if it's an autoimmune storm. I don't know if it's my nervous system finally collapsing after years of carrying that kind of relationship. And I don't know if, somehow, in whatever form she became after she left this world, she came to make sure I felt her one last time. I just know the timing is wild. And I needed to get it out of my chest before it ate me alive. So, this started a few years ago, after my mother-in-law died. My husband's dad, let's call him Graham, was devastated, like anyone would be after losing a spouse of more than 50 years. And not long after, he started seeing this woman. I'll call her Darlene. At first, we honestly tried to be hopeful about it. We told ourselves, okay, maybe this is good. Maybe she's keeping him from disappearing into grief. Maybe she's giving him company. something to look forward to. Friends we trusted said she was a little theatrical, the kind of person who likes to be admired and seen. But they didn't think she was dangerous, just a lot. Then my husband Eli and I went out there for Christmas and met her. And listen, I'm not the kind of person who decides I don't like someone in 5 minutes. I really do try, but something about her hit me like an alarm bell. It wasn't just that she was loud or braggy or self-important. It was this unsettling feeling, like the air changed when she walked into the room. The second night, we all went to dinner and came back to Graham's place for drinks. He was proud of his new home. He'd moved into her same community, and he kept saying how much Darlene had helped him pick it out, furnish it, decorate it. She made sure everyone knew it too. And honestly, the place was fine, perfectly decent. But it had these odd choices, like this gigantic dining table shoved into a space where it barely fit, because she imagined herself hosting elegant dinner parties or something. It felt more like staging than living. But Graham asked us, right in front of her, what we thought. So we smiled and said, "It looks great." We were warm. We were polite. We weren't going to nitpick, and we definitely weren't going to embarrass him. Later, though, Darlene and I ended up alone in the living room for a minute, and the mask slipped. She turned to me, no smile, no softness, and basically accused me of being ungrateful. She said she did everything for Graham, and that Eli and I hadn't praised her enough. Not the house, not her vision, not her efforts. She wanted gratitude, public gratitude, over-the-top gratitude. It was like I'd failed some invisible test, and in that moment I remember thinking, oh, okay, so this isn't harmless vanity. This is something else. I did apologize later, because we were trying to keep the peace and protect Graham. But from that point on, we were treated like outsiders. Suddenly, we were the villains in a story we didn't even know we were in. Graham would occasionally ask, "Why do you hate Darlene?" And we'd say, "We don't hate her." Because we didn't. Not exactly. Not then. We were more confused than anything. But she kept feeding him this narrative that she was wounded and mistreated by us, that she was trying so hard and we were cold and unfair. It was honestly bizarre. Like, she didn't even want a relationship with us, but she needed Graham to believe she was the victim. And the whole time I couldn't shake that feeling. Not just narcissist energy, something colder, something that made my stomach tighten when she was nearby. Fast forward a couple years, and we got a call. Graham had fallen on Darlene's patio and hit his head. Traumatic brain injury. Everything unraveled after that. When he got discharged, he wasn't safe to go home. Physically, mentally, he just wasn't. So we admitted him to skilled nursing, and then memory care. Darlene fought us on everything, every step, every decision. At first, it looked like she was just being protective, but it didn't take long for the truth to start surfacing. We learned she'd been draining him financially, little by little, quietly, while he trusted her. And memory care meant paperwork, oversight, family involvement, and most importantly, it meant she wouldn't be in control. The nurses and caregivers dreaded her, and they told us, over and over, that after her visits, daily visits, Graham would spiral. He'd get agitated, then depressed, sometimes even aggressive. Like her presence scrambled his nervous system. Eli and I eventually realized if we left him there, she'd keep tightening her grip until there was nothing left of him. So we made a decision. We were moving him closer to us, in another state, and we had to do it without her knowing. I am not exaggerating when I say it felt like a covert operation. We coordinated with staff, timed everything, kept communication tight, because if she'd found out, she would have blocked it, delayed it, spun chaos, anything. The staff helped by giving her a decoy story about where he was that day, and we got him out, got him to the airport, and got him on a plane before she even realized what was happening. After that, friends back in that town started clearing out Graham's house for us, and they discovered something that made my skin crawl. His belongings were all over her house. Clothes, personal items, things he'd owned for years. She handed them over, but not kindly. More like she was being forced to give back what she'd already decided was hers. Our friends shipped things to us in these big taped-up boxes. One day, 3 of them arrived by UPS. We didn't have room in the garage, so we lined them up in our entryway, just temporarily, until we could sort through them. And that night, something happened that I will never forget. We were just sitting there watching TV, totally normal evening, and our black lab, Mabel, was lying nearby, calm, sleepy, peaceful. Suddenly she shot up like someone had yanked her by a string. She ran downstairs, fast, like she was fleeing. We heard this sound that didn't even register at first, because it was so out of character for her. This terrified, broken noise. Not barking, more like wailing, crying, like panic with a voice. We ran down and found her on her bed shaking so hard, her whole body looked like it was vibrating. She was making these awful sounds, like she was screaming. We tried everything, holding her, talking softly, checking the house, listening for thunder, fireworks, anything. Nothing. No loud noises, no storm, no smell of smoke, no strangers outside. Nothing had happened. Eventually, we calmed her enough to bring her upstairs for bed. But as we passed the entryway, as she got near those boxes, her fear came roaring back. She bolted up the stairs, not to the second floor, not even to our bedroom, but all the way up to the top level like she was being chased. And she ran straight into her crate. She hadn't gone into that crate on her own since she was a puppy. The next morning, she wouldn't come down. We had to coax her to even go outside. And that's when it hit me. The only unusual thing in the house was those boxes. So I moved them immediately, down into the basement, out of sight. And it helped, but it didn't fix her. She stayed off for weeks, jumpier, watchful, like some part of her still thought danger was nearby. At our next vet appointment, I told the vet what happened. He asked all the obvious questions: storms, noises, pain, anything traumatic. And when we said, nothing, only the boxes, he got quiet and said we should talk to their behavior specialist. We did, and she couldn't give a scientific explanation, not really, but she said, as gently as possible, that it sounded like Mabel had been deeply frightened by something she perceived as a threat, like something in her instincts screamed, unsafe. And here's the part that still makes me sit back and stare into space sometimes. Mabel had never met Darlene. They were full of Graham's clothes, his things, soaked in the air of that place. Whatever energy lived there, whatever had been around him while he was being manipulated and drained and controlled. It took Mabel almost a year to fully return to herself. And after that, I changed how I handled every single shipment. I wouldn't bring boxes into the house again. I opened them outside, on the driveway. I aired everything out. And I'll just say it, I cleansed them. Sage, the whole thing. I did the house too. Some people will roll their eyes at that. I get it. But I also know what I saw with my own eyes. A steady, brave dog, one who wasn't skittish, one who wasn't dramatic, react like she'd just come face to face with something she couldn't understand, but knew was wrong. I always believed animals can sense something off in a person. I just didn't realize they might be able to sense it lingering on objects too.
So,
We just moved into this older neighborhood down in South Louisiana. One of those places where the streets feel sleepy, the trees are heavy with moss, and every house has a story it's not in a hurry to tell. The whole area is getting updated, but the bones are still old. Big porches, tall windows, that kind of classic Southern beauty. When we first toured this house, I remember pausing in the doorway and thinking, oh, okay, not scared, not unsafe, just this very specific vibe. Like masculine energy, but not in a warm, protective way. More like stern, a little stagnant. Like someone had been standing guard for a long time and never got the message that the shift was over. But the first couple weeks? Fine. Totally normal. We unpacked, settled in, did the whole new house routine. Then I finally decided to use the jet tub. And that's when things started getting weird. Because every single time I get in that tub, this heavy wave of sadness hits me. Like it rolls over my chest and just sinks straight through me. It's not even tied to any thought. I'm not sitting there spiraling about anything. It's just there. And on top of that, it makes me ridiculously sleepy. I've fallen asleep in the bath twice. Twice. That is not me. And around the same time, I started catching movement out of the corner of my eye constantly. Like shadows slipping down the hallway. Just quick, darting motion. Enough to make you turn your head, but not enough to prove anything. There's also this one room. And I hate even saying that because I don't want to feed it energy, you know? But that room has me on edge. I'll be watching my shows at night, and I'll hear things shifting in there. Like boxes sliding, blinds tapping, little noises that sound like someone adjusting something in the dark. And when I walk in, I get this intense, almost nauseating feeling. Like the air is heavier. The closet is the worst part. The closer I get to that closet, the more dizzy I feel. Like my body starts protesting before my brain can explain why. And the other night, I opened the closet door and the light wouldn't turn on. Pitch black. Just darkness swallowing the doorway. And I'm telling you, the instant that door opened, I felt like I interrupted something. Like I walked in on someone, or something, that didn't expect me. It was such a strong, awkward feeling like, you're not supposed to be here. Shut that. And I had this impulse to apologize. Like my mouth almost formed the words. I didn't because, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to show weakness in my own house. But I did close the door fast. Quietly. Respectfully. Like you do when you realize you just stepped into the wrong room. I've saged. I've cleansed with Florida water more than once. I've opened windows, prayed, spoke out loud, all of it. Next step, I'm doing salt around the house. Because at this point, I'm like, all right, we're setting boundaries. And here's the thing, this isn't new for me. Every house I've ever lived in has had some kind of activity. I don't know why. It's just been my life. But every time I move, I still get that anxiety like, okay, what am I about to meet in this place? And to make it extra spicy, we later found out the land around here is rumored to have ties to an old Civil War era battleground. Which, cool, great, love that for me. Now, let me tell you about the big moments. One afternoon, I was outside with my family, laughing, talking, just being normal, and I glanced toward the back deck, and for a split second, I saw a man out there, and I swear, that same presence spoke to me the next night, because the next night, I was alone in the living room around 10:45, no TV, no music, no background noise, just me on my laptop, dead quiet house, and out of nowhere, my body lit up with that weird adrenaline feeling. Not goosebumps, Not hair standing up, just that internal alarm, like someone is close. Then I started hearing shuffling in the kitchen behind me, and I froze, like fully froze. I couldn't turn my head, couldn't speak. I was stuck, staring at my screen like if I didn't move, it wouldn't notice me noticing it. And then, a whisper. Not right in my ear, more like a couple feet behind me. Just one word. Hey. Soft, casual, like someone trying to get your attention without startling you. Except it did the exact opposite. I didn't respond. I didn't even breathe right. I stayed absolutely still until my anxiety built up enough that I could move one hand and text my boyfriend, Malik. Please come get me. I'm scared. Please. He came in, and the second I saw him, I bolted. Like I popped up and ran straight to our bedroom. My heart was racing, and even after I told him what happened, I still felt watched the rest of the night. Like the air had eyes. And then there was the dog. Our dog, there. He's this shepherd husky mix, and he's normally attached to us like Velcro. Always underfoot, always nearby. So the other night, I realized he wasn't around, and that alone felt off. I went looking for him and found him in the primary bedroom, completely locked in. You know that stance shepherds do when they mean business? Chest forward, legs braced, ears sharp, tail straight, body rigid? That. He was staring into the dark bathroom like he was tracking something he could hear but couldn't see. The hair along his back was raised, and he looked ready to handle whatever came out of there. It scared me so bad I felt my stomach drop. I trust animals, always. If my dog says something is there, I'm listening. And what's wild is, when my stepdad came to see the house for the first time, he kept saying how beautiful it was, but then he got quiet near the primary bathroom. Later, he said, "That bathroom feels strange." I kept wanting to look up at the ceiling, like something was above me. And that's the exact bathroom Bear was posted up at. Then there was this smaller moment that still makes my skin crawl a little. My daughter and I were cleaning up where she'd spilled juice in our bathroom, and when we finished, we walked out and I jokingly said, "Tell the bathroom bye-bye." She did. Sweet little sing-song, "Bye-bye." And immediately, all the lamps in our bedroom dimmed at the same time. Now, could it have been the AC kicking on? Maybe. I've noticed the lamps flicker a little when the system starts up. But the timing was so perfect it made my stomach twist. Like the house responded. Okay, and the true bonus moment. This part is the weirdest, honestly. So I've had this thing since I was a kid, auditory pareidolia. Basically, my brain will pick up sound patterns and turn them into music or talking. Like I'll hear faint radio chatter, or jazz, or classical, like something drifting through static. And it never really scared me. Half the time it actually soothed me. But this one night, I was putting my daughter to bed. I was laying beside her, head resting against her little legs while she got sleepy. We had her white noise machine on, and we also had a Bluetooth camera running. After a few minutes, I started hearing a faint robotic voice underneath everything. And it wasn't like random chatter. It was looped. The same word over and over again, like a glitch. At first, I couldn't make it out. Just that mechanical cadence repeating. Then it sharpened, and I swear on everything, it was saying, "Segregate," again, and again, and again. Segregate, segregate, segregate. It freaked me out so badly I started scanning the room, checking the camera, checking the sound machine, trying to figure out if it was coming from an actual device. Malik saw me on the monitor, looking around all wide-eyed and tense. And the second I stood up and started walking out of the room, it stopped. Just stopped. I never heard it again. Not once. But it gave me that they live kind of feeling, like something was hidden in plain sight for a second, and I wasn't supposed to catch it. So, yeah, That's where we're at. Nothing has physically hurt us, no dramatic movie stuff, but the energy is active, and I'm trying to figure out how to calm it down, or at least make it understand this is our home now. You can exist, but you can't dominate the space. Anyway, that's the update. If things keep escalating, I'll tell you. And if I figure out how to get it to stop, oh, I'm definitely sharing that too. So, when I was in college, I went through this phase one summer where I got really into fishing, like embarrassingly into it. I was out there almost every single day, sunburned and happy, pretending I knew what I was doing. I found this spot on the northwest side of Utah Lake. Well, technically it was Utah Lake, but it felt like its own little world. Quiet, kind of hidden. I heard later it might have gotten bought up and fenced off, which honestly tracks, because it was one of those places that felt too good to stay public forever. My roommate back then, his name was Trevor, was also into fishing. Not as obsessively as me, but enough that he'd tag along sometimes when he felt like getting out of the apartment. One morning we decide, why not take the inflatable raft? It was one of those cheap rafts that looks like a toy, but you convince yourself is totally seaworthy because it holds air. It was late morning, maybe closer to noon than I'd admit. Bright, hot, blue sky kind of day. No wind at all. The lake looked lazy. We paddled out maybe 20 or 30 yards from shore, just far enough to feel like we'd unlocked some secret advantage, even though nothing was happening. No bites, no movement, no drama. We were just sitting there, rods out, half watching the line, half talking about what we'd do next. And then, this is where it gets weird. Out of nowhere, something happened that I still don't have words for. It wasn't like a sound, but it was like a hit. Like reality got tapped with a giant finger. The only way I can describe it is, it was as if the world flicked off for a fraction of a second. Not darkness exactly, more like the feeling of the lights going out, but without the visual part. Faster than a blink, and it definitely wasn't either of us blinking. And there was this sensation, like a sonic boom, but totally silent. You know when a jet passes overhead and you feel that pressure in your chest and in your teeth? Like your whole body registers it before your brain catches up? It was like that, except instantaneous. No build-up, no fade-out. Just wham, and then normal again. What messed with me the most was the time part. I can't honestly say time passed, but it also felt long enough that something in my brain went, wait, that wasn't nothing. Trevor and I just stared at each other. No jokes. No, did you do that? Just pure, confused eye contact. And I remember him going, did you feel that? And I was like, yeah, I felt that. What the hell was that? We didn't immediately paddle back. We just sat there, quiet. Both of us getting that weird butterfly drop feeling in the stomach that usually comes with almost falling or getting scared. Except nothing scary had actually happened. The lake was calm. The sky was calm. But we weren't. And here's an important detail. That summer, I usually fished alone, and I usually had a few beers with me. Not hammered, but enough that if something strange happened, I could have easily brushed it off later and said, yeah, okay, I was probably just in my head. But not that day. I hadn't been drinking, and I wasn't alone. If I'd been by myself, I swear I would have rationalized it within 10 minutes and filed it under weird sensory thing and never brought it up again. But he felt it too, at the exact same moment, with the exact same reaction. That's what makes it stick in my mind like a splinter. Years later, this is the part that made me laugh, even though it also kind of bothered me. I hear someone mention this whole rumor/conspiracy thing about Utah Lake. Underground base, military stuff, alien connections, the whole late-night forum buffet. It was just a glitch. Like the universe skipped. Like something momentarily folded and snapped back into place. It's been over a decade now, and I still don't have a satisfying explanation. And the funny thing is, if Trevor hadn't been there, I probably would have forgotten. But because we both felt it, because we both went quiet, because we both looked at each other with that same "what just happened to us" face, it stayed. And honestly, I still wonder about it. Have you ever had something like that happen around Utah Lake or anywhere? Something that doesn't feel paranormal exactly, but also doesn't feel normal? I've tried to come up with explanations, even goofy ones, like two planes of something colliding, like not airplanes, but, I don't know, layers? Dimensions? Whatever you want to call it. But then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just reaching because my brain hates loose ends. Still, I can't shake it. It felt real, and it felt shared, and it felt like the lake, for one instant, did something it wasn't supposed to do. So, this keeps happening, and every time it does, I get that same little ache in my chest, like something is tugging on an old thread. It'll be just another regular morning. Sun's barely up, coffee hasn't even kicked in yet, and our little guy, he's almost 4 now, will wander into the kitchen with messy hair and sleepy eyes and say, "I saw Nana last night." And I'll just freeze for a second. Because the Nana he's talking about is my mom, Marisol. She died when I was 4. It was violent, sudden, the kind of thing that makes the word gone feel too small. And it's been 32 years. She's not maybe gone. She's gone. Except, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm trying to convince someone. I've just always felt her. Like she never completely left. Like she's been hovering somewhere in the soft edges of life, watching over me, watching over my family. In our house, we have this little shelf for her. Not anything dramatic, just a photo, a candle, a couple of small things that remind me of her. And I talk to her all the time. I'll say good morning when I pass it, good night before bed. On holidays, I still set an extra place at the table. Not because I think she's going to come clinking in with a plate, but because she belongs. She always will. Our son, Eli, has always been an easy sleeper. Like, weirdly easy. When he was a baby, he'd just knock out and stay out. No screaming, no nightmares, none of those big panicked wake-ups you hear parents talk about. Then, somewhere around 2, when he was learning who people were, grandma, grandpa, aunties, all of that, I told him about my mom. I didn't make it scary. I said something like, "Nana lives really far away, but I keep her in my memories and my dreams." I wanted it to be gentle, something a toddler could hold. And not long after that, he started saying this thing that made my skin prickle. He told me, "Nana comes when I have a bad dream." Like it was normal. Like she was just a person who helped. I asked him what she looked like, expecting some toddler nonsense. Purple hair, wings, whatever. But he said, "She looks like you, but with short hair." And I swear to you, I looked just like my mom did. Same face, same eyes. The only big difference is my hair is really long, almost to my hips. My mom always wore hers short. So I did something I hadn't planned to do yet. I pulled out a photo of her and showed him. His whole face lit up, like pure relief and happiness. "That's her," he said. "That's Nana. That's who I see." He explained it in this simple, matter-of-fact way. When he wakes up from a bad dream, she's there, standing near his bed, telling him it's okay, comforting him until he calms down. And here's the part that makes my throat tighten every time. That's what my mom used to do for me. When I was little, and things in our house got loud and scary, she would come to my room and stand over me and whisper that I was safe, that it would pass, that I was okay. Like she was trying to build a little shelter out of her body. So when my son described her doing the same thing, without me ever telling him that, I didn't know what to do with it. I just sat there, staring at him, feeling like my heart had been gently cracked open. Later that day, I checked the baby monitor footage. We still have cameras in his room, mostly out of habit, mostly because parent brains are never fully calm. And I wish I could explain what I saw in a way that feels normal. Nothing else happens that's big or dramatic. No doors slamming, no creepy shadows crawling across walls. Just little things. A pendant hanging on a hook will swing slightly when the air is still. A toy that was left in the stroller ends up back in his play corner when no one's been home. My husband, Noah, will swear he put his pen back in his desk cup, and then we'll find it on the floor like it just rolled there on its own. The spice jars in the kitchen will be shuffled. Nothing wild, just a couple switched places like someone was fussing with them. And every time I notice, I do the same thing. I pick it up, put it back where it belongs, and I whisper, "Okay, Mom, I love you too." I don't go around saying I believe in ghosts. I really don't. But I believe in her. I believe in whatever love is when it refuses to stop being love, even after everything, even after time, even after the kind of ending that should have erased her completely. So now, when Eli says, "I saw Nana," I don't argue with him. I don't try to rationalize it out of his mouth. I just ask, "What did she say?" And he'll shrug in that sleepy little kid way and say, "She said she loves you, and she loves Dad, and she loves me." And then he'll go back to playing like he didn't just drop something holy onto the kitchen floor. And I'll stand there, holding my coffee, trying not to cry. Because somehow, in the middle of ordinary mornings, my mom still gets to be part of our life. Like she found a way to come home. So, this happened a long time ago, but I can still picture it like it was yesterday. And I'm telling you straight, this is a true story. It was maybe 12 or 13 years back. I just made a new friend named Maya, and one afternoon I ended up at her older sister Leah's apartment. Leah lived with a flatmate too, Brooke, and she happened to be home. So there we were, the three of them and me, all sitting around with mugs of coffee, chatting in that easy, slightly new friendship kind of way. At some point I needed the bathroom, and Leah pointed me down the hall. When I opened the door, I remember thinking, whoa. The bathroom was huge, way bigger than you'd expect in an apartment. There was this old-fashioned clawfoot bathtub tucked in the corner, and the toilet was diagonally across from it. I sat down, and while I was mid-pee, sorry, but that detail matters, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A young woman, about my age, sitting calmly in the bathtub. I swear my whole body jolted. I almost launched myself off the toilet right then and there. But when I turned my head to look directly at the tub, she was gone. Now, here's the thing. I've had experiences like this before. So it wasn't the idea of a spirit that shocked me. It was that sudden appearance, like someone had just blinked into the room with me. That initial moment is always the part that rattles your nerves. I finished up, stood, and went to wash my hands. And again, there she was in my peripheral vision. This time I kept my eyes forward, like I didn't want to startle the moment away. And because I wasn't looking straight at her, I could actually make out more. Her posture, the brightness in her expression. She was smiling. Just smiling warmly, like she was happy to be noticed. And she kept pointing, like gently insisting, toward the doorway, toward the living room. And I had that familiar sensation I sometimes get, where it's almost like a thought that isn't quite mine settles into my mind. Tell them I'm here. I stood there a second with my hands dripping over the sink, trying to decide what to do. Because I barely knew Maya. I just met Leah and Brooke. And how do you come out of a stranger's bathroom and casually announce you've just seen a ghost in their bathtub? Still, it felt important. She wasn't scary at all, more like bright, bubbly, like she was almost excited. So I went back out, sat down, and tried to act normal for maybe a minute. My heart was thumping. And then I finally blurted, kind of awkwardly, this might sound strange, but do any of you believe in ghosts? Maya gave me a skeptical look. Leah kind of laughed, like she thought I was joking. But Brooke leaned forward immediately and said, "Why? What happened?" So I told them. I explained that sometimes I see or sense things, and I described the young woman I'd seen in the bathtub. Her age, the friendly smile, the way she kept pointing toward the lounge. As I talked, Brooke's face changed. Not in a dramatic horror movie way, more like she was trying to keep her expression steady, but something in her eyes sharpened, like she was suddenly very alert. She asked me to wait, just hold on a second. And she got up and walked quickly into her bedroom. A moment later, she came back holding a photo album, the old kind, thick and heavy, with glossy photos tucked into plastic sleeves. She set it in front of me and said, very carefully, "Can you look through this and tell me if you see her?" I flipped pages slowly, my stomach feeling weirdly tight. And then I stopped. Brooke didn't say anything right away. She just stared at the photos for a long moment, like she was trying to keep her thoughts from spilling out too fast. Then she spoke, slowly. "The girl whose face you pointed to. She was a friend of mine." Brooke swallowed hard. "She died in an accident a few months ago." And I felt my whole body go cold. Brooke tapped the other photo, the one I'd pointed at for the hair. And a few days before she died, she got a haircut. A new style. Exactly like this. She let out this tiny, stunned laugh that wasn't happy at all. She loved it. She wouldn't stop talking about it. I'm not exaggerating when I say the hair rose on my arms instantly, like my skin knew before my brain could catch up. Because here's what hit me. I didn't know Brooke. Brooke didn't know me. There was no social media trail back then like there is now. No casual scrolling where you accidentally absorb details about strangers through mutual friends. There was no way I could have known any of that. And yet, the details lined up in this eerie, exact way. We all just sat there, quiet for a moment, like the room itself had shifted. And the strangest part? I didn't feel fear. Not really. It was more like being humbled, like something reached across a veil and gently tapped my shoulder. That spirit, honestly, felt lovely, light, cheerful, like she'd wandered in with this vibrant, playful energy and just wanted to be acknowledged. Even now, years later, I can still remember how alive she felt, even though she wasn't. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How was your holiday? Drop a comment down below and let me know. As for me, I'm really grateful for everything this past year brought, and most of all, for all the love and support you've continued to show the channel. Thank you so much for sharing so many of your mysterious experiences with us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. So, let me tell you about 3 friends, traveling sales guys, who spent more nights on the road than at home. Back then, they were always bouncing between provinces for work. After a long day of pitching products and chasing orders, they had this routine: find somewhere to eat, have a few drinks, laugh a lot, then crawl back to the hotel and do it all again the next day. The three of them were named Korn, Jai, and Neron, and on the night this happened, only Neron stayed sober. Korn and Jai got properly tipsy, the kind of drunk where everything is funny and your brain stops doing its job. So Neron, being the responsible one, offered to drive them back. On the way, someone groaned, "Bathroom, now." So they pulled into a gas station close to midnight. At the time, Thailand was in one of those energy-saving phases. Fuel pumps would shut down before midnight. The stations would feel half asleep after hours, but the little convenience store inside still stayed open, and sometimes there'd be a tiny food spot serving late-night bowls of something comforting. This place was dim, not pitch black, but enough that the shadows felt heavy. They parked near a small restaurant inside the station, and right by the entrance stood one of those wooden greeting statues, carved like a traditional Thai woman, hair in a bun, hands pressed together in a Y, the kind that's meant to welcome you. Now, Jai was the problem. He was drunk and had this talent for saying the dumbest thing possible at the worst time. He stumbled right up to the statue, leaned in like it could hear him, and grabbed it right at the chest like it was a person. Then he slurred something filthy, like, "Hey, beautiful, come help me in the bathroom." And he laughed like he'd just invented comedy. Korn laughed too, because of course he did. Neron didn't laugh. He just sighed, the tired kind of sigh that says, "I'm surrounded by idiots." They split up to use the restroom. Korn and Jai were in and out fast, but Neron took longer, washing his hands properly, checking his phone, probably taking a moment to pray for patience. And while Neron was still inside, Jai got that mischievous look. You know the one. The "I'm about to do something stupid and I'm going to regret it" look. He waddled back to the entrance, grabbed the wooden statue with a grunt, because those things are heavier than they look, and dragged it over to the restroom area. Then he placed it right in front of the stall door Neron was using. He sprinted away, giggling, nearly tripping over his own feet. So when Neron finally opened the door and stepped out, there it was, a carved wooden woman standing inches from his face in the dark. Neron screamed, like a real scream. "What the? Ghost!" And Korn and Jai lost it. They were bent over, wheezing, tears in their eyes, slapping the wall like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. Once Neron realized what it was, his face went tight with anger. He marched over, grabbed the statue, and shoved it back where it belonged, right in front of the restaurant entrance. Then he turned around and snapped at them. Low voice, serious. "Enough. Don't touch things like that." Korn muttered an apology. Jai pretended to be sorry, but you could tell he still thought it was hilarious. Neron, still annoyed, went into the convenience store and bought a couple things. Water, maybe snacks. Then they all got back into the truck and drove off. And that should have been the end of it. It wasn't. They were approaching a red light, a quiet stretch of road, barely any traffic. Neron slowed the truck to a stop, and then, bang! A violent crash hit the back of the pickup, loud enough that all three of them jerked forward. Neron twisted around in his seat. Korn leaned over and looked out the back window. Jai, drunk but suddenly very awake, craned his neck. And there, in the bed of the pickup truck, was the wooden welcome statue. Not standing neatly either. It was knocked over, its body sprawled against the cab, like it had been thrown there hard enough to slam into the roof. The inside of the truck went ice cold. Naran's first instinct was rage. He whipped around and shouted at Jai, "Did you do this?" But Jai's face was wrong. Not mischievous, not amused. He looked pale, sober pale. "I didn't," he said, almost whispering. "I swear to you, I didn't touch it. I've been sitting here." And Naran believed him, because Jai didn't look like a guy caught in a prank. He looked like a guy who'd just seen something that rewired his soul. They sat there at the red light, frozen, not even noticing when it turned green. Finally, Naran said the only thing that made sense, even though it made no sense at all. "We're going back." So he turned the truck around and drove straight back to that gas station. When they pulled in, Jai refused to get out. "No," he said immediately. "Nope, I'm staying here." He clutched the door handle like the parking lot was an ocean and the truck was the only boat. So Naran and Korn climbed out, walked to the back, and grabbed the statue. Up close, it looked normal. Just carved wood, painted face, hands together, a little weather-worn, nothing special. They carried it back to the restaurant entrance and set it down where it had been. Then they turned to leave. And that's when they heard it. A sharp little sound. Pop. Then, soft, unmistakable movement on the concrete. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Something rolled down the small steps toward them. Naran's heart jumped into his throat. Korn leaned forward slowly, like his body was afraid to commit to seeing what it already suspected. It was the statue's head. The head had come loose and rolled down like a dropped coconut. For a moment, they just stared. And honestly, at first, Naran tried to rationalize it. Maybe it cracked when it slammed into the truck bed. Maybe the joint was already weak. Maybe the fall did it. He swallowed hard, picked up the head with both hands, and reattached it carefully, like he was handling something sacred. When he finished, they stepped back. The statue stood there again, perfectly upright in the dim light. Hair in a bun, traditional dress, hands pressed together. Still. Quiet. Naran and Korn started backing away, keeping their eyes on it, because neither of them trusted turning their backs anymore. And then, the statue blinked. Not once, twice. Slow and clear, like it was letting them know, "Yes, you saw that." Naran didn't scream this time. He didn't even speak. He and Korn just turned and ran, full sprint, back to the truck. Jai saw their faces and didn't ask a single question. Naran slammed the gear into drive and they sped out of the station like it was on fire. The next morning, Jai stayed in the hotel, hungover and oddly quiet, like his body had survived the night, but his mind was still stuck there. Naran and Korn went to meet a client, did their work, tried to act normal, but the whole time it sat in the back of their thoughts like a stone. What did we see? So later that day, in broad daylight, they drove back to the same gas station, same restaurant, same entrance, and the statue was there. But something was different. At the base of it, there were offerings, fresh-looking ones, food, sweets, and a bottle of bright red syrup. Korn crouched down, staring at it like it might explain everything. Then he went inside and asked one of the staff gently, "Why do you put offerings out there?" The staff looked at him like he'd asked why they breathe. Korn hesitated, then admitted, carefully, quietly, "Last night, we saw it blink, and it ended up in our truck." The reaction was immediate. You know how it is. Once you say something like that in Thailand, it's like lighting a match in dry grass. Staff and a couple customers hurried outside and started looking at the truck's license plate, whispering, pointing, saying numbers to each other. Because to a lot of people, anything strange tied to a vehicle can mean lottery luck. Naran and Korn didn't mention Jai's crude joke. They left that part out. They just stood there, feeling small. Later, when the lottery results came out, the winning number matched their plate. Exactly. And here's the strange part. None of them bought a ticket. Not one. Because whatever luck that was, it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a warning they didn't deserve to cash in. And one more thing. Because after this happened, they couldn't stop noticing those statues everywhere. Someone later told them another story. They said they stayed at a hotel with one of those same wooden greeting statues near the hallway. Late at night, they heard a sound outside their door. Pock, 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 like wood tapping the floor. They opened the door, and they swore the statue was moving down the hallway. Not running, not walking, hopping, still in its prayer pose, hands pressed together, bouncing like a stiff wooden frog across the tiles. Pock, pock, pock. So, have you ever seen those wooden welcome statues? If you've seen one, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And hey, maybe it's just a story. Maybe it's coincidence, imagination, alcohol, the dark playing tricks. Thai people believe deeply, sometimes in spirits, sometimes in luck, sometimes in things you can't prove, but you also can't dismiss. And sometimes, when people honor something enough, it starts to feel like it's watching back. But don't worry, not every wooden statue is haunted. At least, that's what we tell ourselves. So, I don't tell this story to freak you out. I tell it because it's one of those memories that stuck to me, you know? Like it left a thumbprint. When I was 13, I was in a really heavy, lonely place. I was dealing with depression, acting out, flirting with anything that felt dark, just because I didn't know where else to put all that pain. I didn't fully believe in spiritual stuff, not in a committed way, but I was disruption enough to keep one eye open, if that makes sense. The thing is, my family always had little quirks. My mom, Marisol, could read people's emotions like a weather report, and she'd have dreams that came true later. Small things, but specific enough to make you pause. My older brother, Eli, used to talk about seeing things in the house, like shadows that didn't belong to anyone. Me? I never knew what my thing was, but my mom always warned me, very seriously, not to mess with anything malicious. She'd say, "You're like a lighthouse, you draw things in." I'd roll my eyes, but it always sat somewhere in the back of my mind. And then that Christmas, I got a Ouija board. Not from my mom, just to be clear. It was one of those gifts that slips through because someone thinks it's a joke. And at 13, I thought it was either going to be nothing, or it was going to be something big enough to finally prove everybody wrong. For about a week, nothing happened. I played with it alone in my room, stupidly, impatiently, doing everything you're not supposed to do. I'd rush, ask a question, laugh at myself, push it too hard, treat it like a toy. And honestly, looking back, that was the whole problem. I was messy and open and miserable. I was like an unlocked door in a storm. One night, I decided to do it right. I followed the instructions as closely as I could, took a deep breath, and called out, quietly, but with intent. And it was immediate. The temperature dropped so fast it felt unreal, like someone opened a freezer inside my bedroom. The sound changed too, like when you put on noise-canceling headphones and the world gets weirdly muffled. Then I heard this high ringing, sharp and loud, like it was inside my skull. And then the planchette slid to yes. I swear to you, the second it moved, my whole body went into panic. I wasn't excited anymore. I wasn't curious. I was terrified. I yanked my hands away and ended it in the dumbest way possible. Something like, okay, bye. And I shoved the board away like that was going to undo it. But the air didn't go back to normal. It got colder. Every hair on my arms stood straight up. And then, I know how this sounds, I do. I looked up at the mirror across my room, and I saw something behind me. Not like a full, clear movie scene. More like a shape that shouldn't have been there. Too tall, wrong angles, the kind of silhouette that makes your brain scream before you even understand what you're seeing. And the part that still makes my stomach twist is that it felt like it was coming closer, like it was leaning into the room with its arms open, like it wanted me. I ran. I sprinted down the hall in my socks, almost ate it on the stairs, and I barged into the living room trying to explain to my dad and my stepmom, Tessa, what happened. They laughed, like full-on, "You're watching too many scary videos," laughing. My dad, Reed, was the type who didn't believe in anything he couldn't hold in his hands. He called it nonsense. But even he made me pack the board up and bring it to my mom's house when I went there a couple days later. Like he didn't believe it, but he also didn't want it around. When I got to my mom's, she took one look at me and her expression changed. She didn't say, "What did you do?" She said, "Something's attached." Like she could feel it the way you feel a pressure shift before a storm. But I was so scared of disappointing her that I lied. I told her I was just stressed. I hid the board in my bag and tried to pretend I hadn't brought a whole nightmare into her home. That week, things got strange. All of us, my mom, my stepdad Jonah, even my brother, started having these dreams. Not identical, but close enough to make my skin crawl. There was a woman in them, mouth stretched too wide, like her jaw didn't fit right. She'd loom over us like she was leaning down from a ceiling corner. And the worst part was that she was screaming, but there was no sound, like watching someone scream underwater. We'd all wake up around the same time at night, too. Different rooms, same moment, like something nudged the whole house awake. And the dogs. Our dogs wanted nothing to do with me. They'd avoid me, hide under chairs, leave the room when I walked in. They acted like I smelled wrong. My mom started cleansing the house the way she always did when things felt heavy. Windows open, prayers, getting rid of old objects that felt off. She threw out random stuff that had been sitting around forever, like she was trying to remove every possible hook. Finally, after she confronted me, because I genuinely hadn't eaten properly in days, I broke. I sat at the kitchen table, shaking, pulled out the board, and told her everything. She didn't yell. She didn't shame me. She looked relieved almost, like, "Okay, we can deal with this now. Now I know what I'm fighting." She set up what she called a protected space. I'm not going to describe it like it's a how-to, because that's not what this is. But she took it seriously, like a mother putting on armor for her kid. She made it clear we weren't playing anymore. This was about closing a door I'd opened carelessly. Everyone left the house except me and Jonah. My hands were sweating so badly I could barely keep them steady. We put our fingertips on the planchette, and I remember thinking, "Please let this be nothing. Please let me have imagined it." It wasn't nothing. The planchette jerked hard, erratic, like it had a temper. It tried to slide off the board. It bounced through letters too fast to make sense. It did that thing people warn you about, racing, spiraling, acting like it wanted to break rules just to prove it could. Jonah kept his voice calm and firm. He spoke like you'd speak to a stray dog that's baring its teeth. No fear, no cruelty, just authority. He told it to leave the house, told it to leave me alone, over and over. And then, after a few minutes, it stopped. Just stopped. The silence after was so intense it felt like my ears were ringing again. We sat there, waiting for something, anything, like we were holding our breath in a paused room. And then my stomach growled. Not a normal hungry growl, a deep, empty sound like my body suddenly remembered it needed fuel. And I got hit with this wave of hunger so powerful it was almost embarrassing, like I could have eaten the table. My mom came back later, and I devoured a whole pizza like I'd been starved, because I basically had been. I remember looking down and seeing my stomach all bloated and tight, and feeling this sick little thought crawl in. What if it was feeding on me? What if it took something and now it's gone? My mom told me something that still haunts me a little. She said that whole week she couldn't feel me the way she normally could. Like my signal was dim. Like I was still there, but muted. But I'll be honest with you. Even now, when I'm really low, I sometimes catch something in the corner of my eye. A shadow that feels too tall or a darker patch in a dark room that makes me stare a second longer than I want to. And maybe it's just my brain. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe it's trauma plus a wild 13-year-old memory. But part of me still wonders if that night left something behind. And that's the part I don't know how to explain away. So let me tell you about this place. An old farmhouse out in the country, easily over 100 years old. The kind with creaky floors, thick wooden doors, and that quiet, settled feeling, like it's been watching the seasons roll by forever. A few years back, I ended up there a handful of times because it belonged to my mother-in-law's then-boyfriend's family. Well, technically it was his aunt, Marlene, who lived there. The land had been passed down for generations, and you could feel that history in everything, from the worn porch steps to the way the fields stretched out like they'd always been there. Anyway, the first time we visited, Marlene and her husband Dean casually mentioned, like it was normal dinner conversation, that they thought there was a spirit in the house, mostly down in the cellar. They believed it was an old farm worker who died on the property decades ago. The way they told it, he was helping with a piece of equipment, something like a tractor or a heavy implement, and there'd been an accident. Fast, brutal, the kind of thing you don't really recover from. They said he'd loved the farm, loved the family, and even in death, he didn't seem to want to leave. And here's the part that made my skin prickle. More than once, they'd seen this dark shape in the cellar. Not a person exactly, more like a black smear of a person, an outline that didn't quite belong to the light. They said it would appear near an old wooden rocking chair, almost like it was sitting there. And a couple times, they swore it looked like it was holding something. Once a long-handled tool, like a shovel, and another time something that could have been a gun. Weird detail, right? But then Dean shrugged and said, "That's how he was. Always had a tool in his hand. Always ready." They didn't talk about it like they were scared either. Honestly, they spoke about him with this strange fondness, like he was part of the household, like a quiet guard dog you never see, but you know it's there. Marlene even showed me a video they'd recorded once, because they'd caught something they couldn't explain. They were home alone, no kids running around, no pets inside, and suddenly from upstairs you hear this sharp clink, like a marble or a small ball dropping onto hardwood. Then it starts to roll. Not just once, over and over, like something keeps dropping it, letting it bounce, letting it roll. And it goes on forever. I mean, not a minute or two, closer to an hour, off and on. You can hear them in the video calling out to each other, getting more and more annoyed and confused, and finally, they go upstairs to check. They turn on lights, open doors, look under furniture. Nothing. No ball, no loose object, no reason for it. And the weirdest part is the sound is so clear you'd swear you could reach out and pick it up yourself. Now here's where it got even more interesting. Marlene's nephew, Caleb, grew up in that house. And Caleb would not, under any circumstances, go down into the cellar. You'd think a grown man who'd lived there his whole childhood would be used to it, right? Nope. He'd get to the cellar door and suddenly remember he needed to check something outside, or he had a phone call, or he didn't feel like it. Every single time, like clockwork. And the thing is, he always insisted he'd never seen anything. Not once. But his cousin Tessa, who loved stirring the pot, said that was absolutely not true. And what really kept this story stuck in my head is that Marlene and Dean genuinely believed the spirit wasn't harmful. They didn't describe it as angry or cruel, more like protective, territorial maybe, like it cared about the land. They'd point out how their farm never had the problems everyone else did, Neighboring properties dealt with coyotes getting into coops, strange tracks near barns, even trespassers cutting through woods or hunting where they shouldn't. But Marlene and Dean? Nothing. No poachers. No animals messing with their livestock. No weird damage. Dean would just smile, like it was obvious, and say something like, "He's still working, still keeping an eye on things." And the way they said it didn't feel like a spooky campfire tale. It felt like a family truth. Something they'd accepted the same way you accept a creaky stair that always groans in the same spot. I'll be honest with you. I never felt unwelcome there. Not even a little. If anything, the house felt steady, like it had rules and boundaries. Like if you came in with respect, you'd be fine. But still, every time we visited, I'd catch myself glancing toward that cellar door, thinking about that rocking chair in the dark, and wondering if something down there was listening, quietly, patiently, still guarding a farm it refused to leave behind. Hey, so I'm gonna be honest. I feel a little ridiculous saying this out loud, but I also can't keep brushing it off anymore. For the last couple months, like 2.5 give or take, it's felt like something shifted. Like either me and my friends accidentally stepped into something we don't understand, or the land we're living on is holding on to something heavy, something mean, something that doesn't want us here. It kind of started after my grandpa passed. That's the moment my brain keeps circling back to, like a pin stuck in a map. But even right before that, I had these stretches where I felt drained. Not tired, not stressed, more like someone unplugged me and I couldn't charge back up, no matter how much I slept. And then the weird little things started piling up. Gnats everywhere, stink bugs like it was their apartment too, spiders in places that made no sense, and the scratches, the bruises, me and a couple of my friends too. Random marks showing up like we'd bumped into something in the dark, except none of us remembered doing it. Then we started digging around because, of course we did. It turns out there's all this local lore about the property, old family names tied to the land, a woman people still whisper about, some community witch from way back in the 1800s. And right across from our complex, there's this small cemetery owned by her descendants. It's one of those things you can ignore until you can't, and lately it's been hard to ignore. And then the incidents. That's what really got me. First, my friends moved in. Like my close friends, Nadia and Seth, ended up renting one unit, and my other friend, Rowan, grabbed another. Suddenly, we had 3 apartments in the same complex, all basically our little group. It felt like it was going to be this fun, cozy chapter, you know? Except not long after that, the building right across from Nadia and Seth's place caught fire. Like full-on flames, sirens, the whole thing. Everyone was like, "Wow, freak accident," and we tried to treat it like that. Then Rowan ended up in the ER because their appendix was close to bursting. Emergency surgery. That kind of thing shakes you even when it ends up okay. And then right on the heels of that, Seth got badly injured at work, bad enough that he couldn't keep the job. It was like every time we exhaled, something else hit. For a minute I told myself, okay, life is just chaotic. Sometimes bad stuff comes in clusters. I tried to be logical. I really did. Then I took a trip, down south, to visit a friend and clear my head. And honestly, the trip itself was fine. It was the drive back that messed with me. I decided to take a different route home, and it was late. Like that eerie time where it's technically morning, but your body knows it's still night. Somewhere around 2:30 a.m., I crossed into this stretch of highway that felt like it swallowed sound. I pulled into a rest stop just to wake myself up for a minute, and that's when my phone and radio started going completely haywire. My Bluetooth kept disconnecting and reconnecting like it was panicking. Then when I tried to play music, my phone literally called itself, like I was suddenly in a phone call with my own number, and the music started playing through the call audio. I remember just staring at the screen like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" I shut everything off, got back on the road, and somehow my GPS settings flipped to avoid tolls. I didn't touch it. I know I didn't. But it rerouted us off the main way and deeper into these back roads. And right when I turned onto it, 3 deer sprinted across in front of the car. I slammed the brakes, didn't hit them, and they ended up on the other side of the road. All 3 stopped, turned, looked right at us, and I swear to you, swear, their eyes reflected this sharp red glow. Not the normal white shine, not yellow. Red. I drove like a grandma after that, barely breathing, because the road was slick and twisting and my hands were shaking on the wheel. When we finally got back to the highway, we passed a deer that had been absolutely destroyed, like something had hit it and kept going. It was horrifying. And then, from the back seat, Nadia, who had been quiet the whole time, goes, "I didn't want to say anything, but there was someone walking behind us on that road, like on foot, and they followed us until we reached the end." I remember my stomach dropping, because nobody else saw them, but Nadia wasn't joking. She looked pale, real fear. Not long after that, back home, we got hit with another disaster. I was out running errands, just normal shopping, nothing special, and my phone rings. It's Rowan, frantic, saying there are cops and fire trucks everywhere at the complex. I'm thinking, okay, another building fire, which already sounds insane to say twice. But when I got the details, it wasn't just a fire. A small plane crashed near the complex and exploded. Not in a field miles away, near us, like within shouting distance, close enough that I could picture exactly where it happened. That was the moment I stopped being able to pretend this was all just normal bad luck. And then I worked this summer camp for my old high school marching band, helping out, long days, lots of kids, lots of chaos. We ended up with a nasty COVID outbreak through the group, and that alone was stressful and exhausting. But one night, after everyone was asleep, I stepped outside for air around 3 a.m. It was quiet, like the world had been turned down. And then I heard knocking, like hard knocks, not wind, not branches, knocking from somewhere close. And after that, voices, like people talking, softly, not far off. I went to look. I checked the corners, the shadows, the spots sound usually bounces from. And there was nothing. No one. Just that thick emptiness that makes you feel stupid for being scared. And somehow even more scared because you know what you heard. And today was the cherry on top. We woke up to another building on fire in our complex. Another one. At this point, it's like the universe is doing it on purpose just to prove a point. And after all that, we tried to do something normal. Grab lunch, breathe, act like regular people. We pull into a McDonald's and the whole area is locked down. There's a guy pulled over, 3 cops around him, and it turns into a standoff. Roads blocked, sirens, everyone trapped in place, just watching, waiting. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Because when you stack it all up, fires, the plane crash, the injuries, the sickness, the creepy late night stuff, the animal thing, the marks showing up on our bodies, the bugs, the history of the land, it starts to feel like there's a thread connecting it all. And I don't know if that thread is a curse, or an entity, or some kind of hex, or just the cruelest run of coincidence I've ever seen. But it feels attached, like it found us and decided we're its people now. I've tried a couple protection things, small stuff, things I know, things that usually make me feel grounded. But lately, I just feel like I'm standing in the rain with an umbrella full of holes. Okay, so this happened to me when I was a kid, maybe 9-ish, somewhere around there. My memory's a little fuzzy on the exact age, but I remember how it felt like it was yesterday. I'd just gotten out of martial arts practice. Karate, I think it was. Could have been something similar. Either way, I was exhausted, sweaty, and in a rotten mood because the instructor was one of those adults who acts tough just because kids can't talk back. You know the type. My older brother Adrian was supposed to pick me up. He rolls in driving my parents' car, and his girlfriend at the time, Melanie, is sitting in the front seat. I didn't really like her back then. Not because she did anything super awful. I just got this vibe like she was always judging me. So I slid into the back seat and went quiet. The drive home was short and painfully awkward. No music, barely any talking. Just the sound of tires on the road and me staring out the window, counting streetlights. When we got to our apartment, Adrian dropped me off and then immediately left again with Melanie. And suddenly, I'm alone. Here's the thing. I was a kid who loved creepy stories, horror videos, all that stuff. Which is funny, because I was also terrified of the dark. Like, genuinely terrified. My brain had this messed up little rule where I could only fall asleep if someone else was in the room, because I figured if something came in, it would take them first. I know, kid logic is unhinged. So I open the apartment door and do that panicked scramble for the light switch, like I'm defusing a bomb. The light by the entry clicks on, but everything beyond that little area is pitch black. And I just freeze there, sitting by the door, hugging my knees, listening to nothing. Let me explain the layout because it matters. When you walk in, the living room is off to the right. Straight ahead are the stairs going up. And to the left is this hallway that runs to 3 rooms. At the very end is the bathroom. Along the hallway, the kitchen door is on the right side, and on the left is my dad's little office. And that office? Oh man, that room always freaked me out. It was filled with shelves and random stuff and shadows, and as a kid, I was convinced a hand could reach out and grab you from literally anywhere. Like the room was just built for nightmares. So I'm sitting there by the door, trying to be brave, and then, bang. It comes from the kitchen, not like a gentle sound, like a drawer being slammed shut, hard. I whip my head toward the kitchen door. It's closed. I just stare at it like if I look away, something will sprint out. A minute passes. Bang! Another one. Then another. And then it starts escalating so fast my brain can barely keep up. There's crashing, like drawers yanked open and thrown. I hear what sounds like metal clattering, like utensils tossed into the air. Then this sharp sound that I swear was glass breaking. And there's this weird buzzing noise too, like some appliance kicking on and off, on and off. It was like a full-on fight was happening in there, like the kitchen was throwing a tantrum. And I'm just stuck by the door, paralyzed. My whole body felt cold and heavy at the same time. I didn't even want to breathe too loud. I grab my crappy little phone and call my mom, whisper yelling into it like, "Mom, you need to come home right now." She's like, "What happened?" And I'm trying not to cry while I'm saying, "Something is in the kitchen. Something is throwing things. Please come home." Good news. She believes I'm scared and says she's coming, which might as well have been 100 years. So I'm sitting there in a tight little ball beside the door, basically doing the world's saddest, quietest panic attack while the kitchen keeps going. Crashing, banging, clattering. like it's trying to prove a point. I remember thinking, if I move, it'll notice me. So I don't move. And then finally I hear keys, the lock, the door opening. My mom steps inside, and the second she does, silence. Not even that normal apartment building quiet. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. I start crying immediately, trying to explain between sobs. My mom puts her bag down, gives me this worried look, and then, very calmly, she walks straight to the kitchen like she's about to catch someone red-handed. And I follow behind her, like 2 steps back, clinging to her like a baby duck. She opens the kitchen door, and nothing. No mess, no broken glass, no drawers pulled out, nothing on the floor. Actually, this is the part that still makes my skin crawl. The kitchen looked cleaner than I remembered it being, like someone had straightened everything up, lined things nicely, made it neat. My mom just stands there, confused. Then she looks back at me like, "Are you sure?" And I'm standing there shaking like, "Yes, I swear on my life, it was going crazy in here." Nobody really believed me after that. Not fully. My brother brushed it off. My sister teased me. I even blamed Adrian's girlfriend, Melanie, because in my head I was like, if she wasn't there, he would have stayed and I wouldn't have been alone. Again, kid logic. I was desperate for someone to blame. But my mom, she didn't truly take it seriously until later in life, when she got more religious and started being more cautious about spiritual stuff. After that, she'd bring it up occasionally like, maybe you weren't imagining that. And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't. Because whatever that was, it scared me half to death. And then it cleaned up after itself. Like, thanks, I guess? Terrifying, but very considerate. So this story actually belongs to my cousin, but it's one of those things that hit our whole family so hard, we all ended up knowing every detail. My cousin had come to the US from Mexico to study abroad, and at first, everything felt exciting and normal. She stayed with our aunt and uncle in this cozy, totally ordinary house. No creepy history, no strange vibes, nothing like that. The house was full, too. My aunt, my uncle, their 2 kids, my grandma, and my cousin. I'll call her Lena. Lena was the kind of person who could make friends in 5 minutes. She was social, charming, always laughing, just easy to be around. For the first few months, she was doing great. School, friends, the whole new country adventure. Nothing stood out as wrong. Then, slowly, like so slowly you don't notice at first, she started changing. She stopped going out as much, started saying no to invites. Then she began skipping class here and there. She ate less. She was irritated all the time, like she was carrying something heavy and didn't want anyone to touch it. My aunt thought, okay, homesick. Totally reasonable. New country, new culture, missing family. So she backed off a little and tried to give Lena space. Still, my aunt quietly checked the obvious things. No drugs, no drinking, nothing like that. Lena wasn't getting into trouble. She was just fading. And then one night, more like early morning, everything snapped into focus. It was somewhere around 2:30 a.m., that dead quiet hour where the house feels like it's holding its breath. Lena suddenly burst into my aunt and uncle's bedroom, not knocking, not hesitating, just appearing in the doorway like she'd been chased. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand, and she couldn't get words out at first. She kept trying, but her mouth would open and nothing came out. My aunt and uncle sat her down, tried to calm her, asked what happened, what she saw, what she heard. But Lena just looked terrified in this really raw, almost childlike way. So they did the only thing they could do. They let her sleep in their room that night. In the morning, after everyone had coffee and daylight had returned to the world, my aunt sat Lena down, gently but firmly, and said, "You're telling me what's going on." And that's when Lena finally admitted it. She'd been using a spirit board. Not once, not as a joke at a party. She'd been doing it a lot, in her room, alone, late at night. She told my aunt it started the way these things always start. Curiosity. Something silly. Something she didn't really believe in but wanted to try because it felt spooky and fun. She said at first it was harmless. Little questions, little answers, nothing that seemed serious. But then it stopped being a game. It became a habit, then an obsession. She started blowing off friends just to go home and play. She'd stay up until dawn asking questions, and then she'd miss class because she couldn't wake up. When she was outside the house, all she could think about was getting back to her room and putting her hands on the planchette again. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. She said she thought she'd made a friend. Like she genuinely believed whatever was responding was kind, or at least neutral. She talked to it like it was company, like it was something that understood her, until the answers started changing. At first, it was little stuff she tried to explain away. Shadows flickering at the edges of her vision. A whisper she couldn't quite make out. Light tapping against her upstairs window, except her room was on the second floor, so it wasn't like a branch brushing the glass. Then it got worse. Scratching sounds, soft like fingernails, along the wall and the door at night. The shower curtain shifting when she was in the bathroom, even when she was completely alone. Small items disappearing, hair ties, keys, little personal things, then turning up in places she swore she'd already checked. And the whole time, she didn't tell anyone, not a word, because she was embarrassed and scared. And I think, deep down, she knew if she said it out loud, it would become real in a way she couldn't control. She did try to stop. She said she tried, but she described it like, once she opened that door, it didn't really close again. Then came the night she ran into my aunt's room. Lena said she was in bed, trying to force herself to sleep, when the tapping started again. Then the scratching. The usual routine, like it was reminding her, I'm still here. And for the first time, she did something different. She started praying. Not just a nervous whisper, like a real prayer from the heart, like she was finally calling for help. And right in the middle of it, her bed started shaking. Not a little tremble, not, maybe I imagined it. She said the whole bed shook so violently the legs bounced on the hardwood, like someone had grabbed the frame and was rattling it in anger. She said she could hear it, wood knocking on wood, over and over, like a warning. She didn't even finish the prayer. She just launched herself out of bed and ran, barefoot, half asleep, heart pounding, straight down the hall to my aunt and uncle. When my aunt heard the full story in daylight, she was furious, like the kind of angry that comes from fear and love mixed together. Because in her mind, Lena hadn't just scared herself. She'd brought something into a house where her kids and her mother were sleeping. And then the practical panic set in. What did you invite in here? And how do we get it out? Not long after that, Lena went back home. School had completely fallen apart by then, which was the whole reason she'd come to stay with my aunt in the first place. It wasn't just one decision, it was mutual. Everyone could tell she wasn't okay, and she needed to be somewhere that felt safe again. From what I heard, nothing paranormal ever happened to anyone else in the house. It was like whatever it was had been focused on her. The spirit board was destroyed. My family says it was burned and thrown out. The room was cleansed and blessed. Windows opened, prayers said, the whole thing. But the part that sits weird with me is this. After she left, we didn't really hear much from her again. And every once in a while, someone in my family will say, quietly, like they don't want to tempt anything, I hope nothing followed her. Because the truth is, you don't always know what you're inviting in, and you definitely don't always know what it takes to make it leave. So, I want to tell you a ghost story, and honestly, this is the one that made it impossible for anyone to ever talk me out of believing that something is out there. I was 18 when my life cracked open in two directions at once. Fear on one side, freedom on the other. I was still living at home with my mom and my little brother. My dad had died a few years earlier, and the house felt smaller after that. Like grief takes up space you can't redecorate around. On top of that, I was wrestling with being gay in a place and a time that didn't exactly make room for it. This was mid-80s England, working class, northern, and not the sort of town where you casually said, "Oh, by the way, I'm queer," and expected hugs and a cup of tea. I was dating a girl, Hannah, because that's what you did when you were terrified of the truth, but desperate to look normal. Then one night, Hannah and I ended up in a pub, ran into an old mate from school, Callum, and his girlfriend, Rhea. They were all in on the goth alternative scene and said, "We're going to this club. You should come." The club had a reputation. A bit dark, a bit strange, a bit not for everyone. It was like walking into oxygen for the first time. Suddenly, there were people who looked like how I felt inside. People who didn't apologize for being different. Even Hannah liked it, until she met someone else there, and our relationship quietly ended. It hurt, because I did love her in my own way, but it also felt like the universe clearing a path. And that's where I met him, Adrian. Adrian wasn't a romance, not even close. He was a doorway. The first person who made me feel like I didn't have to pretend. We bonded fast. Both of us had lost our dads young, and there's a certain shortcut grief gives you into someone else's life. Within a few weeks, he invited me to a party at his house. Now, Adrian's home life was complicated. His mom used a wheelchair after years of illness, but she was still sharp as a tack and didn't let it stop her from living. A while before I met him, she'd moved out to live with a boyfriend, leaving Adrian alone in their big old family house. Adrian's boyfriend at the time had moved in, but the relationship didn't last. Later, I learned why. Because the house didn't feel empty. At that party, everyone was brilliant, warm, dramatic, hilarious, misfits in the best way. I found my people, and not long after, I started hearing stories about Adrian's ex, Jonah, and how Jonah couldn't cope with what was happening in the house. It started small, they said. A thing missing here, a cupboard left open there, odd knocks, the sense that someone had been in a room when they hadn't. But it escalated, like whatever it was realized it had an audience. And then the big one. Jonah was heading upstairs one night after Adrian had gone to bed, and something he couldn't see, shoved him backwards. He went down the stairs hard. That was it. Jonah never slept there again, not after that, and the relationship collapsed under the weight of fear. By the time I came along, Adrian hated being alone in that house at night. So our little group, Adrian, me, and our friends Imogen and Lewis, started taking turns staying over. There were 3 bedrooms, so it was easy to rotate. The first few nights? Nothing. Just laughter, music, cigarettes, late-night toast, and that sweet feeling of being young and newly unafraid. But then there were little things. We did what people do when they're scared, but want to feel brave. We made it funny. We gave it a name. We called it Arthur. And once you name something, you start talking to it like it's a member of the household, which, looking back, might have been a mistake. Not long after that, I finally told my mom I was gay. and it went about as well as you'd imagine. I'd been staying at Adrian's more and more, and one afternoon, we popped back to my mom's for some clean clothes and a proper meal. It was spring. My mom even went out to the garden and cut flowers for us to take back. Bright yellow ones, cheerful, almost mocking in how normal they looked. Adrian, bless him, clocked my nerves and said, "I'm going to the shop. You'll do it better if I'm not here." So I called my mom in. She walked in holding the flowers, and I tried to speak. Tried and failed and froze so hard it felt like my throat had glued itself shut. Then I just blurted it. "Mom, I'm gay." Her face changed in a single second. She dropped the flowers like they'd burned her hand, and she said something that still stings when I remember it. Something like, "Why would you tell me that?" Like my truth was a mess I'd chosen to make. I left that day with my bag already packed, and when Adrian came back, he said quietly, "Just move in with me. You're here anyway." So I did, and I swear to you, already like it noticed me moving in, the house woke up again. At first it was daytime stuff, little disturbances. Then one afternoon, around 4, Adrian and I came home from work, and he said, half joking, like calling out to a mate, "All right then, Arthur, give us a proper bang." Instantly, there was a violent crash against the unused living room door, like a boot had kicked it as hard as possible. Not a creak, not settling wood, a thud that made our stomachs drop. We ran to the hallway, expecting to find someone. The front door was locked. No one there. Nothing moved. But even with something that loud, a few minutes later your brain tries to save you. You start wondering if you exaggerated it, if your memory is dramatizing it. That's the strange part. Fear makes you doubt your own senses. Then there was the loft hatch. Every morning, open. We'd shut it, properly. It would be open again the next day, for about a week, like someone up there was listening and grinning. Another night, all of us were downstairs talking when we heard glass smash upstairs. We sprinted up and found the bathroom bulb had shattered in the sink. Only the bulb was in the middle of the ceiling, and the sink was against the wall. Explain that one to me. I heard the tapping above my bed for hours some nights, and once, this one still creeps me out, I heard scraping outside the front window, like someone dragging a stick along the fence slats. On and off for ages, deep into the night. I looked out, but a bush blocked the view. The next morning, there were scratches along the fence. Maybe it was a person. But who does that for hours at 3 in the morning? And yes, we did the Ouija board thing. I know. Scraps of paper, letters, a glass on the table. Very teenagers in a horror film. Most of it felt like nonsense, like someone nudging it. But then we asked its name, and it went straight to Arthur, like it had been waiting. Then it claimed, very specifically, that it knew Adrian's dad from the army, and that it came to frighten us. We laughed it off in the moment, because you have to. But underneath the jokes, we were all carrying this constant low-level dread, like living with a thunderstorm that never fully breaks. I heard a shuffle sound upstairs. Faint. I ignored it. Then again, closer, heavier. So I turned the music off. 2 seconds later, I heard footsteps. Not creaks, not 1 or 2, proper, deliberate steps, circling around the room above the living room, which was Adrian's bedroom. No carpet up there, just bare floorboards, and it sounded like someone in heavy boots pacing, round and round, like they were building up speed. I didn't go up to check. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I grabbed my keys and left the house so fast I nearly forgot my coat. I walked straight to my workplace and waited for Adrian's shift to end so I wouldn't have to go back alone. When we got home together, everything was normal. Doors locked, windows shut. No sign anyone had been there. Then, just when I thought I was settling into the weirdness, Adrian and Lewis played a prank on me. I'd been ill, didn't want to go out, so they went clubbing and I stayed home alone. Around 2:30 in the morning, they snuck in, crept upstairs, and started stomping like a herd of elephants above me. Then they came charging down the stairs, laughing, threw the living room door open, and burst in like maniacs. I nearly folded myself behind the sofa with a cushion over my head like that was going to save me from anything. They found it hysterical, until they realized I wasn't laughing. They apologized, properly. They hadn't meant to scare me that badly. And here's the thing. A few nights later, something happened that proved it wasn't just them messing about. Adrian, Imogen, and I were in bed, maybe half an hour into trying to sleep, when we heard a gigantic crash downstairs. Not a knock, not a bang. A multi-layered sound like shelves had been shoved over and a whole room had fallen apart. We all shouted to each other, because obviously we'd all heard it, and we armed ourselves in the stupidest, most desperate way. A heavy ornament for Imogen, and for me, I snapped a picture frame and held the broken wood like a weapon. Like that would do anything against whatever we'd been living with. We went downstairs together. Nothing. Not a book out of place. Not a shelf tilted. Not a single item disturbed. We searched the entire house. Then we sat in the kitchen drinking tea with shaking hands, the three of us refusing to admit out loud how terrified we were. We didn't really sleep after that. We just waited for morning like you do when you're a kid and you've had a nightmare. But the house wasn't finished. Later that night, or early morning really, we heard another loud crash. Then footsteps ran up the stairs, stopped on the landing outside Adrian's room. And something breathed 3 times. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Then, this laugh. And I swear to you, it didn't sound human. It sounded like something trying to imitate laughter, like an animal making the shape of a person's joy. We opened the door, crept out, checked again. Nothing. And we didn't go back to bed after that. I lived there for a little over 2 years. Eventually, I met my first proper boyfriend and moved out, partly because I wanted to start a new chapter, and partly because I couldn't live with that constant tension forever. Adrian understood, but I still felt guilty leaving him in that place. Over time, the activity calmed down. It didn't vanish completely, but it faded. Like whatever it was needed the right conditions to get loud. And here's the part that makes it complicated. Adrian changed in the years after. He became paranoid, painfully so. He started believing I was out to harm him, like I was poisoning him or plotting against him. It built slowly, then took over. Eventually, he was diagnosed with a serious disorder. We tried to help, we tried to stay close, but it became too much. He pushed everyone away in the end, and I still wonder, quietly, late at night, if the house was haunted the way people imagine, or if the grief, the loneliness, the upheaval, the energy of everything Adrian had survived, somehow seeped into the walls and took on a life of its own. We never saw a thing. It was always sound, movement, broken objects, that feeling of menace. But it was real. And it wasn't even my only experience. When I got my first flat alone, top floor of a crumbling old Victorian townhouse, I had a few strange moments there too. One night, I was reading in bed and the toilet flushed by itself. Properly flushed. Old high cistern, long chain, and yet nothing was moving, just the cistern refilling like someone had pulled it. Another time, there was a crash in the hallway. One pane of glass in the loft hatch had shattered. In the morning, I found a stone on the stairs. But the only glass panel up in the roof space was still intact. So where did the stone come from? And the last one, middle of the day, quiet house. I was studying, no TV, no music. The heavy mirror above the mantel just dropped off the wall and smashed. When I checked, the chain wasn't broken. The hook was still on the wall. So tell me, how does that happen? Weird, isn't it? So, there's this memory I carry around that's so sharp, it almost feels like a photograph. I was really little, maybe 5, give or take, and even now, I can close my eyes and I'm right back there. It was one of those sticky summer nights where the air doesn't move and the house feels like an oven. Where I grew up, it was normal to drag beds out onto this little covered porch area, almost like a veranda, because it was the only way to breathe. That night, my mom and dad slept inside, but I begged to sleep outside with my grandpa. I thought it sounded fun, like an adventure. Yeah, I regretted it pretty fast. The veranda sat a few steps away from the house, close enough that you could see the doorway, but far enough that it felt separate. The 2 beds were set side by side, facing the entrance. Grandpa was out cold, the kind of deep sleep where you look peaceful and completely unreachable. Me? I was wide awake, flipping over and over, trying to get comfortable, listening to every tiny sound the night makes when you're a kid and the dark feels alive. I wanted to run inside so badly, but I was too scared to stand up and cross that little stretch of darkness alone. So I just lay there, stiff as a board, telling myself I'd fall asleep any second. Then I saw someone come out of the house. At first, I felt this rush of relief, like, thank God. I assumed it was my dad. The shape was adult-sized, broad shoulders, moving like someone who belonged there. The figure walked out and started heading off to the left, and I whispered his name, soft, but not so soft he wouldn't hear. The figure stopped, and then it turned its head toward me. And in that exact moment, my whole body went cold, because something in me just knew, before my brain could even form the thought, that it wasn't my dad. It was the same height, same general outline, but the feeling was wrong. Like when you pick up a familiar object and realize it isn't the same weight it's supposed to be. It stood there for a couple seconds, perfectly still. Then it started walking toward the veranda. The closer it got, the more my eyes adjusted, and that's when I realized what I was actually seeing. It looked human in the simplest way. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, the proportions of an adult. But where a face should have been, there was nothing. Just darkness. Except for the eyes. 2 points of red light. Not like reflected light, not like someone holding a flashlight, more like they were lit from inside. Steady, quiet, watching. I couldn't move. I couldn't even sit up. I was frozen so hard it felt like my muscles forgot how to work. All I could do was stare. The way it moved is hard to explain. Smooth, almost gentle, like it was trying not to make noise, trying not to startle me. It came right up to my bed and just stood there, looking down at me for what felt like forever. And the strange thing is, it didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me. I know how that sounds, but there was no lunging, no reaching, no sudden motion. It was just there, present, observing. After a while, it crouched down beside the bed, like someone resting on their heels. Its arms settled loosely over its knees, almost casual, like it was getting comfortable. And it tilted its head slightly, one way and then the other, as if it was trying to understand me, or maybe trying to understand how I could see it at all. That part sticks with me the most, that sense of curiosity, like I was the unusual thing. Time didn't work normally in that moment. It could have been 2 minutes or 20. I genuinely don't know. I just remember eventually my eyes started burning and my throat tightened, and I began to sob. Quiet at first, like I was trying to keep it inside my chest. My body started trembling, but I still couldn't move. And then, this is another detail I can picture so clearly. My Uncle Milo came home late. He was living with us then, young and always out with friends. I heard him coming up, heard his footsteps, and he heard me too. He called my name from the darkness, like, "Hey, why are you still up?" And the second he got close enough to scoop me up, the moment I felt arms around me, I completely lost it. Like something snapped loose in my body. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The kind of hysterical crying that scares adults because they can't figure out what's wrong. My uncle carried me inside, and my parents woke up, panicked and confused. Everyone was asking questions at once, and all I could do was cry and cling, because I didn't have the words to explain a faceless person with red eyes was just sitting next to me like it belonged there. And here's the part that still makes my skin prickle. I never saw it leave. There was no running away, no footsteps fading. It was simply not there anymore. Like the moment another adult entered the scene, it was gone. For years, that memory just lived in me. I think about it randomly and get that same sinking feeling in my stomach. At some point, like everyone does, I went looking online, trying to find anything that sounded similar. And it messed with me even more, because I realized other people had stories that felt weirdly familiar. Researchers, I finally brought it up to my mom again, as an adult. And she remembered the night. She remembered how inconsolable I was, how shaken everyone felt afterward. But she admitted they didn't really believe what I was saying back then. They assumed I had a nightmare or an overactive imagination. This time I told her, I didn't make it up. I'm telling you, it happened. And she got quiet in this way that made me realize she was replaying it too, except now through adult eyes. She actually looked a little freaked out, like she suddenly didn't like the idea of that night being a kid's story anymore. We talked about what it could have been for a long time, and honestly, I still don't know. But if I trust my gut, if I trust what it felt like, whatever it was didn't feel demonic. It didn't feel like hatred or violence. It didn't touch me. It didn't threaten me. It felt strange and watchful and careful, like something that didn't want to scare a child, but didn't quite understand how not to. So I've never really been the ghosts aren't real type, but I've also never been the person who swears up and down they've seen things either. I've always sat somewhere in the middle, like, hey, just because I haven't witnessed something doesn't mean it can't exist, you know? My wife, Lena, and I have been married a little over 10 years now. We've got 3 boys, 12, 8, and a tiny newborn who still feels brand new every time I look at him. We live in a rental out in the countryside of southern Alabama, the kind of place where the nights are so quiet you can hear the house settling and the bugs outside doing their thing. We rent the place from the original owner's son. The woman who actually lived here most of her life had gotten too frail to stay on her own, so she moved in with her family before we came along. She passed not long after we moved in, strangely enough, on the exact day of my birthday. That stuck with me. We've been here a little over a year, and for most of that time, nothing happened. Nothing I could point to and say, that was definitely something. But the house, it's hard to explain. It's a normal older home, built sometime around the late 60s. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, big living room, small kitchen, and a back utility room that I use as my workspace. It's not creepy on the outside. It's not falling apart. It just has a feeling, like it's been holding its breath. Last winter we found out we were expecting again. I'll be honest, I was hoping for a girl this time. But we ended up being blessed with another little boy, and he is perfect. He was born healthy overall, except for hemophilia, which runs in our family. Our middle son has it too. So it wasn't a shock, just something we already knew how to handle. But about a month before the baby arrived, I started noticing things. At night, after everyone was asleep, I'd be working or cleaning up, and I'd hear footsteps in the living room. Not little creaks, actual walking, like someone shifting weight as they moved. I kept telling myself, old house, pipes, wood expanding. Don't get stupid. I mentioned it to Lena, and she kind of gave me that look like, okay, sure. But even then, I didn't feel scared. If anything, it felt neutral. Like whatever it wasn't trying to threaten me. I even thought about putting up cameras inside, just to settle it in my own head. But I didn't. I didn't want to turn the house into a project, and I didn't want to stir up something that felt, honestly, kind of harmless. Then the baby was born. We spent a couple days in the hospital, and we finally came home, exhausted, happy, carrying bags like we were moving in all over again. And that's when it got weird in a way I still can't explain. While we're unpacking, my 8-year-old, Mason, walks into the living room holding an old photo. It's a picture of a baby. And the crazy part is, the baby looked a lot like our newborn. Not identical, but close enough that it made my stomach flip. He said it had fallen out of a drawer in a desk in his room, one of those older wooden desks that the previous tenants left behind, and he'd been using that desk for months. He swore he'd never seen the photo before. We all kind of just stared at it, laughed awkwardly, and filed it under creepy coincidence, because what else are you supposed to do? But after the baby came home, that's when I started seeing shadows. And the thing is, it didn't feel hateful. It felt calm, almost familiar, like the sense you get when someone's in the room with you but you're not bothered by it. If I had to describe the vibe, and I know how that sounds, it felt feminine, like a woman or maybe a teenage girl. I never saw a face, never saw features, just shadow and presence and this odd calm that came with it. Until one night. 4 nights ago, I was in the kitchen making a quick snack before bed. Just normal, half-asleep routine stuff. And I noticed a shadow climbing up the wall near the dining area, like it was swelling outward, spreading. I turned to get a better look. And the second I did, my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. The feeling hit me in the gut first, like my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Pure dread. Not nerves. Not, I'm spooked. I mean the kind of terror where your body stops cooperating because it thinks you're about to die. This wasn't the smaller shadow I'd been seeing. This thing was massive. It blotted out light from 2 windows like it was standing directly in front of them, wide and heavy and wrong. I didn't even get a clear shape, just the size of it and the weight of it, and that horrible, crushing sense of danger. I tried to speak and nothing came out. My throat locked up. My eyes filled up and I started crying without meaning to, like my body just short-circuited. And then it was gone. It left as fast as it came, like it had stepped backward into nothing. And the second I could move again, I started yelling, screaming really, telling it to get out. I'm a Christian, and I didn't even think. I just reacted. I ordered it to leave in the name of Jesus Christ over and over. Lena came rushing out of the bedroom and found me standing there sobbing and screaming at empty air. She grabbed me, held me, helped me breathe. I know it looked insane. I know how that sounds out loud, but I also know what I felt. The next day, I sat my kids down and told them, carefully, what happened. I didn't want to scare them, but I needed to know if they'd noticed anything. And my oldest, Caleb, goes, dead serious. Oh, I told you there's a demon in my closet. His name is Ethan. Like he was reminding me I forgot to buy milk. Apparently he'd said it before, maybe once, months back, and I brushed it off because kids say wild stuff. But now he's telling me his closet door sometimes opens and shuts on its own. He says he's never seen anything, just that. And the most unsettling part? He wasn't scared. He shrugged like it was annoying more than anything. Then the next night, this is the part that messes with my head the most. I'm walking into the utility room with a handful of tools, and I feel a hand slide onto my hip. Not a grab, not a poke. More like a gentle, almost affectionate touch, the kind that makes you instinctively think, "Oh, that's my wife." I turned around expecting Lena. Nobody. And I know how crazy it sounds, but it didn't feel scary. It felt comforting, warm, like something trying to calm me down. So now I'm stuck with this weird split reality. One presence that felt peaceful for months, and then that one night, this enormous thing that made my whole body freeze in terror like it was hardwired into me. Ever since that night, the house hasn't felt the same. Even when nothing is happening, I feel on edge, like the air is too tight, like something shifted and didn't shift back. I'm not trying to record anything. I'm not trying to provoke it. I don't want proof. I don't want a picture or a sound clip that I can't unsee or unhear. I just want peace. And I keep wondering, did the baby's arrival change something? Did that new energy in the house draw attention? Was that photo a coincidence or a warning? Or just some strange thread connecting past and present? I don't know. I truly don't. I just know I have to live here for now. Rentals are scarce out here and everything is overpriced. So I'm doing what I can. Praying, keeping my head on straight, trying not to let fear take over my home. And if you're listening to this, I'm not asking you to make it worse. Please don't. I'm living it. I just want it quiet again. I want the house to feel like a house. That's all. So, let me give you a little backstory, because it'll make everything else make sense. I'm Maya, I'm 20, and I'm from the UK. Ever since I was a kid, I've had this weird, constant thread running through my life, like I'm always just close enough to the paranormal for it to notice me back. I had a few intense moments years ago, but things really kicked off again after we moved into our current place about 2 years back. It's this older tower block, 10 floors, kind of stuck in time. I'm up on the 7th floor, and the building has that heavy, worn-in feeling, like it's absorbed decades of people coming and going. You can tell nothing's been properly updated since it first went up, and there are those safety nets around the balconies now. People in the area whisper about why they had to add them, and honestly, you don't hear that kind of thing without it changing how you feel walking the halls at night. I live here with my dad, and at first, it was just little things. A door shifting when it shouldn't, the sense that someone had just passed behind you, even though you're alone. Stuff being moved. But here's the part that gets me. It's always my bedroom. Not the lounge, not the kitchen, not even the corridor. Just my room, like it's been claimed. And my dad isn't the type to play things up. He's pretty practical, you know? But a while back, I was away visiting family, and he was home alone. He had his headphones on and was walking down the corridor toward his room, which is right next to mine. He told me he looked up and saw, clear as day, a small elderly woman, maybe around 4.5 feet, wearing this old-fashioned nightgown. Not blurry, not a maybe, a full figure, walking like she belonged there. She didn't even look at him. She just went right past him and straight into my bedroom. When he told me that, my stomach went cold, because I knew exactly what he meant. I've seen her too. She's the one I see the most, always moving through my room in the same way, like she has a route she takes. I never catch her face, not properly. It's more the shape, the motion, the unmistakable nightgown. Sometimes she passes near the foot of my bed or by where my TV is. And even though it's unsettling, the strange part is, I don't feel pure evil from her. It's not like those stories where the air turns foul and everything feels violent. It's more like presence, attention. But my cat? Oh, my cat is not confused at all. He won't go in there. He'll sit outside my door and stare, ears twitching, like he's listening to something I can't hear. If I try to coax him in, he just backs away like the doorway is a boundary he refuses to cross. So that's been my normal for 2 years. Creepy but manageable, right? Until this week. Because I'm moving out in a few days for university, and the closer it gets, the more I've had this nagging feeling that whatever's in my room doesn't like the idea of me leaving. Like it's not just haunting a space, it's aware of me. Last week I packed most of my stuff up and stayed over at my boyfriend Ethan's place, trying to squeeze in as much time with him as I could before I go. While I was gone, my dad left the flat in absolute state, typical, and he offered my older sister Leah some money to clean it since she runs a small cleaning business. One afternoon, Leah went over there alone. She was on the phone to my brother, just chatting about me moving out. Nothing dramatic, just normal family talk. And the second my name and moving came into the conversation, she heard this massive bang come from my bedroom. Not a knock, not a creak. A bang like something had been thrown, like furniture had slammed. When she pushed the door open, she said it looked like someone had gone in and tossed the entire place in seconds. My drawers were yanked open. My wardrobe doors were wide. Pillows and bedding were on the floor. A bag of clothes I'd packed, spilled everywhere like it had been ripped apart. Even my soft toys were scattered. Leah didn't stand there and investigate. She didn't call out. She didn't do anything brave. She ran, straight out of the flat. And honestly, I don't blame her. Today I came back from Ethan's and my dad was home. He'd already seen what Leah saw, so he didn't even have to explain it. I just walked to my room and stopped. The second I saw it, I felt this deep uneasiness settle into my chest. Not just fear, something heavier. Like I'd walked into a room where someone had been furious. I just shut the door. I couldn't even look at it properly. I told myself, nope, not right now. I went and sat with my dad and tried to focus on practical things. My moving plan, what time we'd leave, what still needed packing. And then, another bang. Louder than I expected, sharp, immediate. My dad and I looked at each other, and I felt my skin go prickly all over. I stood up, walked to my door, and opened it. I stepped inside, and 3 of my drawers, the ones near the wardrobe, were closed. They had been open just minutes before. I know they were. My brain was still replaying the mess in my head, trying to make sense of it, and now it was like something had decided, no, this is how it's going to be. It's hard to explain what that does to you, emotionally, because it wasn't just messy, it wasn't just weird. It felt like a response. Like something in that room heard us talking about me leaving and made sure we understood it was listening. Okay, so I need to tell you about what happened because it's one of those nights that still feels like it's clinging to me a little. Last night, well, technically early this morning, my boyfriend, I'll call him Milo, and I could not sleep. It was around 2:15 a.m., that ugly, quiet hour where your brain starts getting loud. Milo was having a really hard time emotionally. He's been grieving his granddad, Arthur, who, honestly, sounds like the one person in his family who truly showed up for him. Like, really showed up. He started crying, and I just held him. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed there, rubbing his back, letting him shake it out. And later he told me that in that exact moment, he was thinking, I wish he was back. I wish Arthur was here. I didn't know that at the time, but it matters because of what happened next. Here's the strange part. Earlier that day, I'd made Milo toast. Just toast, nothing dramatic. But when I brought it to him, he went kind of still and said, "That's exactly how Arthur used to make it. Same type of bread, same amount of butter, and I'd even sliced it into these little uneven triangles the way his granddad apparently always did. I swear to you, I wasn't trying to recreate anything. I wasn't even thinking. My hands just did it. And then this morning, it happened again. Same toast, same exact vibe, and I also grabbed him a little pastry on the way home, one of those cherry almond ones from the bakery. I didn't even pause to choose it. I just grabbed it like it was automatic. Milo looked at it and said, Arthur used to bring me one of those when I'd slept well, like, as a reward. And the thing is, Milo did sleep well, for the first time in ages. And just so you understand this whole thing fully, Milo has this teddy bear that holds a small memorial capsule with Arthur's ashes inside. He keeps it close. Like, it's not just a keepsake, it's comfort, it's safety. That bear becomes important. So, that night, while we were lying there, I started talking about how when I was a kid, I used to mess around with silly seance stuff, like holding hands, asking questions into the dark, laughing about it. My mom has always been the kind of person who says she feels things, like she'll know someone's about to call before the phone rings, or she'll dream something and it'll happen. I used to roll my eyes, but also, a part of me has always wondered if I inherited some of it. I don't know why it came up, but it did, and it led to this moment where Milo and I ended up holding hands in bed and just talking into the room, quietly. Like, Arthur, if you're here, if you can hear us, can you give us a sign? And I'm not kidding when I tell you, we got sound back. Twice. Not like a house creak, not like plumbing, something sharper, like a weird little audio response in the air. The kind of noise that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. Milo froze. Full body tension. He looked terrified, and I tried to keep my voice calm and warm because he was already spiraling. I said something like, "It's okay. If that's him, then maybe it means he's here in a protective way. Maybe he's checking on you." We ended up talking about something Arthur had said before he died, how he'd send someone to look after Milo one day. And listen, I know how that sounds, but Milo said it like it was a real conversation they'd had. And I've always felt this intense, protective pull toward Milo, like I'd throw myself in front of anything if it meant he didn't get hurt. So in that moment, it felt weirdly possible. But then Milo kept whispering, "You're doing it like him." And at first I laughed it off, like, "Babe, you're high and emotional. You're connecting dots." But he was serious. He told me my laugh, my actual laugh, sounded exactly like Arthur's laugh. Not just similar, like it hit him in the chest. And then, without thinking, I did this little gesture where I leaned my forehead into his hair, kind of nuzzled him while I hummed, and Milo jerked back and said, "He used to do that exact thing." And I swear, it felt like my body was doing things before I decided to do them, like I was watching myself from half a step behind. Then I started getting this ache in my leg, sharp cramps, deep pain, and Milo went pale and said Arthur had struggled with really bad leg pain near the end. I kept flexing my calf and wincing, and Milo asked over and over, "Is it gone?" And I kept answering in this weird, clipped way that didn't sound like me. Even I noticed it, like the words weren't passing through my usual filter. At this point, I was still trying to talk myself down. Like, okay, we hit the vape, it's late, we're sleep deprived, we're emotional, it's just the perfect storm. But the coincidences just kept stacking. and Milo got more and more scared the more I tried to reassure him. So we left the room. Fully got up, grabbed blankets, and moved to the other room because the air in the bedroom felt heavy. I felt wrong. That's the only word. Like my skin didn't fit right. Like something had stepped into my space and I couldn't tell where I ended. Milo sat on the edge of the bed holding the teddy bear, trying to steady himself. And then he said, very quietly, "Arthur, if you're here, please stop scaring us." And this is where it gets hard to explain without sounding ridiculous. Milo started asking questions, simple ones, yes or no. Are you here? Are you trying to help? Can you calm down? That kind of thing. And the responses came out of my mouth. Not like I chose to answer, not like I was pretending. It was more like the answers rose up fully formed and just left me. I remember hearing my own voice and thinking, why did I say that? And I couldn't stop it. It felt like something was steering. Milo was shaking. I was shaking. And I could feel him deciding in real time whether he thought I was having some kind of episode or whether this was actually happening. He finally said, firmly, "Arthur, you need to leave her. Go back. Go back into the bear." And I don't know what came over me, but I reached out and put my hand on the teddy bear, like I was compelled. The second I touched it, I got this rush through my body, like a wave. My chest tightened. I couldn't catch my breath, and I started breathing really fast like I'd sprinted, like my lungs forgot the rhythm. And then it stopped, like a switch flipped. I just sat there, hand still on the bear, breathing hard, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm back. That's me. That's actually me again. It was around 5 a.m. when that happened. After that, we both crawled into bed and fell asleep. Real sleep. Deep sleep. The kind you don't force. And the weirdest part is, we've both been struggling to sleep next to each other because we both have trauma stuff that gets triggered at night. Usually one of us jolts awake, panics, leaves the room. But this time, we slept. Together. Peacefully. So now I'm sitting here the next day feeling off. Like there's a faint echo of last night still in my body. And I honestly don't know what to believe. Was it just the vape and exhaustion and grief and suggestion creating a shared hallucination? Maybe. That's the logical explanation. I don't know. I just know it was the strangest night I've ever had. And I needed to tell someone who would actually listen. Because whether it was something spiritual or something psychological, something happened. And I can't shake the feeling that it meant something. Okay, so before I tell you what happened, you should know where I'm coming from. At the time, I was studying civil engineering. I've always been the there's a logical explanation kind of person. I'm not religious, more agnostic than anything, and I genuinely love trying to understand the universe, but in a scientific way. Ghost stories? Paranormal stuff? I used to roll my eyes. I'd have told you there's a reasonable explanation for basically everything people claim they've seen. And then, something happened with my girlfriend back then. She's my wife now, Maya. Something we both saw, together, wide awake, totally sober. And it messed with my worldview in a way I still can't neatly pack back into a box. This was about 8 or 9 years ago, when we were home for the summer in Lincoln, Nebraska. We were college kids, bored out of our minds one night, and we decided to drive out into the country just to stargaze and be alone for a while. No plan, no destination, just, let's get away from the lights and sit under the sky. So we took my car and headed out past the suburbs, farther and farther, until the streetlights disappeared. I started turning onto random gravel roads, just kind of wandering, looking for a spot that felt quiet and dark. Eventually, I found this weird little dead end, almost like a brand new driveway that led nowhere. fresh concrete, shaped like a turnaround, like someone planned to build a house there, but hadn't. No buildings, no porch lights, nothing. Just fields. You could have spun in a slow circle and seen farmland in every direction. I turned the car around so we were facing north, and we sat there for a couple hours talking about life, future plans, dumb college worries, the kind of soft, sleepy conversation you only have at like 1 in the morning when the world feels paused. It was late summer, August, I think, because the air was warm but not sticky anymore, and the corn in the field across the road was tall. Like, really tall, easily above our heads. That detail matters, I promise. Around 2:30 a.m., we decided we should head back before our parents woke up and realized we were missing. So I reached for my keys. I remember it so clearly. I slid the key into the ignition, and my left hand went to the headlight switch because I was about to turn them on. And that's when Maya grabbed my right arm, hard. Like, not a gentle wait, a full panicked yank that made my whole body jolt. It scared me so badly I almost swore out loud. I turned to her like, "What is your problem?" But she wasn't looking at me. She was staring straight ahead through the windshield with this expression I still can't forget. Eyes wide, face drained, like her brain couldn't decide whether to scream or freeze. And the instant I followed her gaze, I felt that cold electric feeling climb up the back of my neck. You know that sensation when your body reacts before your mind catches up? Like every instinct you have is suddenly on high alert? Something was out on the gravel road in front of us. At first, my brain tried to make it a person. It wanted it to be a person so badly. But it didn't move like one. It was tall. Too tall. From where we sat, it looked like this pale, human-shaped figure, maybe 7 or 8 feet high, and it was gliding from left to right across the road. The corn behind it was tall, and this thing looked taller than the corn. That's the part that still makes my stomach flip, even now, because corn in August is not short. And it wasn't walking. There was no rhythm, no bounce, no stepping, no arms swinging, no legs doing anything that made sense. It just drifted, smoothly, like it was sliding on rails. We couldn't see details because it was dark. No moon, no nearby lights, just stars and black fields. But the silhouette was bright enough to register as white against everything else. Maya told me later it reminded her of this long, stretched-out, rubbery shape, like a lanky, Gumby outline almost. And the whole time, my fingers were still frozen on the headlight switch. I had this split-second debate raging in my head. Turn the headlights on and see what it is. Or don't, because if it's something that shouldn't be there, maybe it doesn't know you're here. It's embarrassing to admit, but fear does weird math in your brain. Logic was completely losing to instinct. We watched it for, 10 seconds? Maybe 15? But it felt longer, like time got thick. The figure kept gliding to the right until it passed beyond the edge of what we could see. The moment it disappeared, my body finally unlocked. I didn't even turn on the headlights. I just started the car and punched the gas like the road was on fire. Gravel popped under the tires, and we shot off in the opposite direction, bouncing over washboard ruts, not caring at all about noise or dust. Neither of us really talked on the drive back. Not in a normal way. It was more like little broken sentences. Did you? I saw it. What was that? And then, long stretches of silence where we were both replaying it, trying to force it into something explainable. When we got back to my parents' place, I told them what happened. Maya didn't even want to be in the room for it. She was so freaked out she basically fled to the hallway like saying it out loud might bring it closer. She ended up staying the night because she didn't want to drive home alone, and honestly, I didn't want her to either. Neither of us slept. We just laid there in the dark, listening for nothing, and feeling stupid and shaken and wide awake. And here's the part that still sticks with me. If I'd been alone, I would have convinced myself I hallucinated, that I was overtired, that my mind stitched together shadows and corn and starlight into a story. But I wasn't alone. Maya saw it too, at the exact same moment, with the exact same fear, with the exact same description. Two separate brains, same impossible thing. To this day, I can't tell you what it was. I've gone through all the usual explanations: an animal, a person, a trick of perspective, headlights from somewhere, a weird fog, anything. But nothing fits cleanly, especially the height and the movement, and the way it seemed to float without any normal human motion. The only rational idea I can offer that doesn't collapse immediately is, maybe it was some prank, like a tall guy in a costume doing something ridiculous at 3 in the morning out in the middle of nowhere. Which, sure, possible. But then I picture it more clearly. A dude in a massive white suit, gliding silently along a gravel road, taller than a cornfield, with no visible gait. And somehow that explanation feels almost less believable. So I don't know. I just know that night took my certainty, the smug part of my skepticism, and cracked it. And even now, years later, I can still picture that pale shape sliding across that empty road like it belonged there. And we didn't.